Mr. Jake, you have the heart of a cat. Small, insensitive, lacking in courage and bravery, which is probably why you laugh when someone is addressing you seriously. See, cats look very brave. When they're confronted with danger, they show their teeth and their fangs, but they're really scared, which is why they pretend to be bigger than they actually are.
Welcome to the Hippy Dippy podcast. I'm happy to have you here for what is sure to be an interesting show with a lot of amazing topics and a lot of amazing stars. We have many that are returning, two who are making their first appearances, which is going to be Pisco and ActualJake. Pisco actually is one of the most successful people who have gone through the recruitment thing that I've been most impressed by. So I've been waiting for a good show to bring them on, and I thought this was the perfect one. ActualJake, he's a small-time streamer. We're just trying to give him a little boost here. But besides that, we're going to go straight into introductions, and we're going to start with the top left-hand corner, which is Dario, who seems to be shirtless. Can you explain that situation?
Yes, so it's very easy actually. Whenever I'm not streaming, whenever I'm not live on my channel, I'm just naked. It is what it is. So yeah, thank you for having me on.
No problem, no problem. You know what? We support anarcho-primitivism here. Next, we're gonna throw it over to Demon Mama.
Hey everyone, I'm Demon Mama. You can find me over here on Twitch at DemonMamaLive. You can find me on Twitter at YourDemonMama. Yeah, thanks for having me here today, Dylan.
No problem whatsoever. Next, we're going to go over to RedGrayBlue, who just got some technical problems sorted, I believe. Spoke too soon. I spoke too soon.
Rip.
Well, that's okay. If that doesn't work, we do have a replacement in store just in case. So next, we're going to throw it actually over to ActualJake, the corn man himself.
What's up? I do politics, and sometimes it's in a corn suit. I'm a lefty.
What's with the lack of corn suit? What is this?
They have to pay for it.
They have to pay for it?
Yeah. So if we get to a certain level of hype train, I debase myself and lose all dignity. And so that's the thing. And they didn't do it tonight, which is great because it's hot. I'm wearing a hoodie and I have to put the corn suit over it. I'm not a fan.
But now that's not the only reason you're sweating, though, is it? You're sweating because you're nervous, because you're about to debate.
That must be it.
Some really intellectual heavyweights here. You know, the Twitch political sphere is really where politics, makes or breaks, right? I think
we really moved the needle.
Yeah, most certainly. If it wasn't for Twitch politics, I'm sure Biden would have not gotten over the line. I'm sure it would.
If only.
If only. Next, I'm going to throw it over to SushiNax, also known as SuspectSushi, who suited up to copy Endernax, who sadly had to cancel for the show.
Okay. First and foremost, I'm not copying Endernax, okay? We both simultaneously agree that suits just look better than, people who just wear sweatshirts to a debate. All right. But yes, I'm SushiNax. You can catch me on twitch.tv/SushiNax, okay? I'm a social and economic conservative while also being an economics populist lefty. Don't ask me how that's possible, but it is. All right. Other than that, I'm happy to be here as a welfare seat recipient because Dylan knows that I'm actually bad for his brand because I'm very mean in chat.
Very mean in chat. That is certainly true. You certainly bring the content. If there's anything I can say about you, Suspect, you do that. Next,
I had a great outro.
You had a great outro, indeed. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Last Username.
Hey, I'm Last Username. I'm a liberal anarchist. I live in Canada. I always wear a shirt, and I'm always right about everything. Good to be here.
Wonderful. If I know anything about ANCAPs, is that they're wrong on absolutely nothing. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Pisco.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pisco, or Pisco, depending on who you ask, 95. I'm a third-year law student, so I like to talk a lot about legal issues related to politics. Really stoked to be on here, and yeah, let's get into it.
Wonderful. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Tiberius.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tiberius D. I am studying in economics and political science. I'm just about to finish up my ASs in both. Until COVID happened, I was actually going to finish it off this semester. Anyway, long story short, yeah, I'm an evil centrist that gives my dumbass centrist takes, so hopefully you might like something that I say, but most likely you can just come into my chat and tell me why I'm wrong. So thank you very, very much.
Wonderful. And last and certainly not least, actually, no, I think I went through everybody. Never mind. Wait, oh yeah, RedGrayBlue. Oh yeah, you kind of blocked out earlier due to technical issues. What's going on over there?
Dude, ever since I've moved in this new place, my internet on my laptop is garbage, so I can't get the streaming PC sorted out. So I apologize, guys, if I turn into a potato or if I disappear, because my tech is garbage. So I apologize to everyone in advance, but I'm hoping everything will be okay. My filthy centrist takes, not evil centrist takes. Tiberius is out of character in my opinion, because I think his takes are quite based and lovely. So I'm right there with him, and I support all those good ideas. I would say I'm conservative in terms of my belief in how government should be involved in the personal life, but a lot of my issues, I guess, in terms of social issues, are more progressive. So you might find that I'm not a hardcore right winger. I'm probably more of a filthy centrist. So I'm RedGrayBlue. I'm looking forward to the conversation and excited for the people that are on the panel.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the rules, then we're going to get straight into it. Rule number 1. When I am speaking, it is either to calm down the conversation or because I believe I want to bring up a voice to just clarify something quickly. That means everybody else gets quiet. If you do not get quiet, you will be muted. I am very liberal with my mutes, so don't be surprised. Don't be offended. Dario, please don't walk off since you're naked.
Yes.
Don't walk off in anger. I want to keep my stream.
Yes.
Next rule, do not engage with other panel guests in the Twitch chat. If you want to DM them, that's fine, but don't do it in my Twitch chat. Just gets people super heated. Rule number 3, do your absolute best to try to facilitate conversation by not interrupting people excessively. I want to make it sure that everybody gets time to speak. Rule number 4, this is just kind of a clarification of structure. There will be a 1-minute period and a 1-minute ending period, a starting period and ending period, where you will be able to say your position on topic completely uninterrupted. If anybody interrupts you, that's an immediate mute. No interruptions whatsoever. I don't care if they called you out directly. I promise you have a period to respond to them. We have specifically made it so that the last time you can address a previous topic is into the intro of the next topic in case somebody has called you out. Besides that, there is a open free period between those two, the ending and start statement, where you will be able to engage freely on the topic. Is there any clarifications that need to happen?
Is occurred.
Okay, it looks like everybody understands the rules. If you have any clarifications for rules going forward, you will have to DM me on Discord. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to go into the first topic, which is, how far does religious freedom go? We are talking about this in an American context, but if you want to talk about a different model overseas that you might want to do instead, that's perfectly fine. I'll say it one more time. How far does religious freedom go? I'm going to start with the top right-hand corner with RedGrayBlue.
Actually hoping you'd let me go last because I'm still working on my audio stuff. So would you mind if I go last?
Sure. You can go last. I will start instead the top left-hand corner with Dario.
Sure. So I don't generally believe in the concept of religious freedoms, I think. Depends on like how you define it, I guess. I think it's sort of an outdated concept. I think the freedom of speech already encompasses everything that I would consider to be reasonable religious freedoms in society. Generally, I'm like anti-organized religion, and I don't think organized religion should have special exemptions or freedoms within a society. I expect everybody, I respect everybody's freedom to hold to hold faith or beliefs themselves in whatever way they like. But I don't think that is something that should be supported specifically or subsidized by the state in any way. Yeah.
Okay. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Demon Mama.
Yeah. Actually, I'm really glad that that Dario brought up the idea that religious freedom kind of depends a lot on how you define it. In my mind, in our current society, we have a lot of issues where religions perpetuate themselves and certain unique beliefs to themselves into children who are in vulnerable positions and who often have no option to escape. We've seen this with everything from sort of evangelical, like hardcore evangelical Christianity to things like Scientology. And a lot of people's sort of resistance to it seems to depend on their own feelings about the religion itself rather than the principles at hand. I believe that religious freedom ends when you begin to harm another person, or when you begin to restrict and control another person. People should be able to practice their beliefs as much as they wish, as long as they are not harming other people or preventing other people from being able to practice their religion freely, which I think is unfortunately very commonplace currently in the United States. So yeah, when it comes to religious freedom, to me, it's kind of an odd topic, because in general, I tend to think look from a much more liberty focused and a personal expression focus. So yeah, that's my position on it.
No problem. Next, we're going to throw it over to ActualJake.
Yeah, I also take a pretty libertist approach to most things. I think as long as your religious freedom doesn't interact with another person in a way that would affect their freedom, which I mean happens all the time. So I tend to agree a little bit with Dario, insofar as like that's how you say your name, right? Dario or Dario? Can't remember.
You can.
Which one is it?
There's a new pronunciation for every person, so you just go
Okay.
ahead.
Either way. But as far as like the idea that the First Amendment probably covers most of the religious freedoms, yeah. I do think there is, in America, there is specifically an aspect that the First Amendment doesn't talk about really, and that's the you can't enter political discussions and then avoid taxation at the same time for a religious point. But we don't really enforce that in the United States, and I think we ought to. I do think there's a space that you could exist in that is religious without being overtly political. But that said, most things enter political spheres no matter what, because politics is just how we all agree to live. So yeah, I'd say you could be a hardcore right wing any religion if you want in your religious spaces, in your home, whatever that is, and it can inform how you personally vote. But like, I don't think you should be allowed to be throwing gays off of roofs or something, for a very extreme example, so, or even advocating it for a political cause.
Wonderful. Next, I'm going to throw it over to SuspectSushi.
Obviously, as a Christian, I believe that religious freedom should exist. My personal belief is, as long as you're not denying service to somebody for basic utilities and essential like goods and services that everyone needs, I have no issue with like private businesses refusing service to somebody based on religious grounds. Just like I also believe that someone can refuse service to somebody based on that person that wants the services religious grounds. For instance, like a gay baker could refuse service to a Christian person who's like a pray the gay away advocate or something like that. Whatever. It's just one of those things. I don't see any issue with religious freedoms as long as it doesn't infringe on core human rights in the sense of like causing bodily harm or things of that nature. So it's pretty simple. I'm cool with religion. God's number one.
Okay. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Pisco.
Thank you. Religion as a normative matter, I believe, is bad. So is unjustified belief. Despite this, I think that my position on religion shouldn't dictate society's inclinations. So we're a nation of laws, and we shouldn't sort of have our government promote religious doctrine or atheistic doctrine to the people. So I'm more focused and interested on the limits of religious freedom. So our Constitution, the First Amendment, protects religious freedom under two clauses: the Free Exercise Clause and the Establishment Clause. The Free Exercise Clause generally protects people's right to practice a religion as they see fit without government interference, and the Establishment Clause prevents the government from establishing or sponsoring any kind of religion. Usually what we're talking about in these discussions is the Free Exercise Clause and how it's somehow being violated by some kind of government action. So in practical terms, what does the Free Exercise Clause prevent the government from doing? And obviously the Free Exercise Clause has been applied to the states through an incorporation doctrine that the court has expounded upon. Congress can't make laws which regulate religious beliefs as such. They can't tell Congress that being a Christian, or Congress can't tell people that being a Christian means this. They can't punish the expression of religious views. They can't impose special disabilities on the basis of religion view or status, or lend its powers to some kind of ecclesiastical debate. And it also sometimes exceeds or goes to actions. Congress can't, or an ordinance that says you're not allowed to pray to a particular golden calf or to a cross might have some problems with the First Amendment. But even if the government is picking on religion, there could be cases in which that legislation could be valid if it has a compelling interest and it's narrowly tailored to fit some sort of compelling interest. But laws that are neutral and generally applicable do not violate the First Amendment, I believe, even though that they might incidentally burden religion. Take, for example, a very famous case called Employment Division versus Smith, in which a native tribe was using peyote, even though it was against state law to do so. Who could live in a society in which the state wasn't allowed to regulate conduct in a neutral and generally applicable way? What would our tax system look like if you could claim an exemption because of religious belief, just because you thought that you were free from all taxes based on your sex notion that that taxation is against the Lord? What would our Social Security look like? What about laws for the draft, child labor laws? Permitting these situations, I feel like, is not what our framers intended. Laws are made for governments of action, and while they cannot interfere with mere religious beliefs and opinions, they may interfere with practices. I think the court's ministerial exception case law was wrongly decided, and for that reason, I think that neutral laws of general applicability do not violate religious freedoms.
Okay. Next is Tiberius.
All right, so I'm completely biased on this one, so I'm taking the gloves off. Dario's thing was based as hell. Like, for me personally, and I'm gonna punch really hard on this one, is that anything that I have heard for the use of religious freedom at this point is pretty much used to justify someone's religious bigotry, for them saying that they're really good people while being massive assholes. So yeah, that's my synopsis in a nutshell. I'm gonna pass it off the last username.
Last username, you're the last one.
Okay. Unless you have a fundamental religious foundation for your morality, then I don't see any possible justification for religion being involved in your concept of freedom. That is, there's no right that you should have specifically because for religious reasons. There's no right, someone else's right that you should be able to infringe specifically for religious reasons. It just shouldn't make a difference. Like I say, I don't see how you can any way justify that unless you literally are believing, basing your concept of freedom on some religious doctrine. But assuming we're not doing that, I don't think you need to do that. You need to mention religion. Religion shouldn't be mentioned in law. It just shouldn't make a difference. So, if you find that you need to make special laws to protect religions or to restrict religions, then I think you should look at the laws, look at the principles that underlie them, and say maybe we're not getting these right. Yeah, it's pretty simple, really.
Okay, and next is RedGrayBlue. Have you fixed your technical issues, and will they not be a problem anywhere in the future for this discussion?
Well, I mean, I'm not God, so I'm not going to promise that. But I think we're square. Don't worry. I think generally my take on religious freedoms is I think summarized well in essentially the founding documents of the United States, that I believe that government does not have a role in dictating any form of religion that an individual should participate in. I believe that laws should not be built on the construct of those religions, and that I think the issue really kind of comes in less so of is government sponsoring a religion, and I know that there are obviously protests and issues that are raised in that. I think that's a worthy thing. But at the same time, I think the bigger issue really seems to come from, at least the statements that I heard from Demon Mama and Dario, has been built around, religion as a mask for, infringing on potential other rights. And so I'm not sure that it's the construct that government is, protecting religion or okay with religion, because I think the subsidy question we addressed a couple panels back, I think that can be resolved quite quickly. I think it really just kind of comes down to how is religion interacting with a host of other laws, i.e., the bakers situation. So I'm not entirely sure how we navigate that. I don't have a clear, defined answer, because I think that's unfortunately the challenge that we're here to discuss today. But I do believe that government should not mandate via the Establishment Clause, as Pisco said much more eloquently than I, how they should be involved in our daily lives. So as I said before, I believe in smaller government involvement in that, and I think that government should not mandate any form of a religious behavior, and those religions should not infringe upon other people's rights as well.
Okay, now it is open forum. If anybody said anything you disagree with, you may now engage them or question them on that point.
I have a question for the more religiously centric panelists on the panel. Imagine you have
Just say me. I was the only person who was religious here.
All right, Sushi Nax. Imagine you have a religion who says that it is extremely vital to the practice and the free exercise of our religion that we be allowed to sacrifice human children. Would you say that the government couldn't pass a law banning such a practice?
I mean, that's a bit of a non sequitur. We already acknowledged that there's certain things there's rights that can be afforded to you. Like, for instance, like when the military allowed for religious headwear, which is actually outside of the military code of conduct, right? Like for people who are like Sikh and things like that to have their religious headwear worn and being pulled into the uniform standard. But when you talk about like things like, oh, like my religious belief allows me to sacrifice children, the government obviously doesn't allow this because there's already protections in place, like thou shalt not kill, right? But it's more like, hey, don't fucking murder people because it's illegal. So there's certain extents to which religion freedoms can naturally go, but it doesn't mean that just because you believe something means that you can just do it with impunity.
So my question then will be the following: by what right do these religious organizations claim exemption from anti-discrimination laws? How come they can say, you know, ministers and our teachers are free? We can discriminate on the basis of race, in fact, when we fire our Catholic school teachers because they're ministers, and you can't infringe on our free exercise of religion.
My legitimate question to you is, why must you include so much government involvement in the institutions of religion?
This is a neutral law.
No, the way I look at it is like if it's the individual rights of a citizen to say, because of my beliefs, this will happen. As long as they're operating within the framework of the law set in place by the nation they live in, I don't see much of an issue.
Title 7, Civil Rights Act 1964.
What about
illegal to discriminate on the basis of race?
I personally don't know of any religions that are discriminating on the basis of race. Can you? Which
Mormonism did it for years.
They claim that they have that power.
Did you say past tense?
Yeah,
they claim to have that power. They
did it after the Civil Rights Act, though. They did it in the 80s. So
they're doing it now. There was a case just this past term in the Supreme Court where it was alleged that the Title VII does not apply, or that ADA or ADEA apply to any religious "quote unquote" ministers.
Catholics have an issue with ladies as well.
Correct. So by what right do these religions? You just said neutral laws should apply to these institutions. I agree. Why should they be free from anti-discrimination laws?
We exempt people from multiple things, right?
That's not an answer to my question.
Well, I just don't find an issue with religious institutions, just like how they're tax exempt status and things of that nature. What I'm saying is I don't think that there's anything wrong with religious institutions having exemptions.
I love that the answer to why is because sometimes we do it.
So Congress is free.
It highlights a good. I think it. Pisco's question kind of highlights a really good point. Which is or something I think that we should be talking about, which is the fact that like a lot of these sort of protections and whatnot have been in our laws, but ignored for a very, very long time. I mean, for example, it's anti-constitutional to have the state endorse religion, but no one who is seriously approaching this conversation would say that the fact that tons of our courthouses have religious iconography all over them of a very specific religion is like somehow the state not endorsing that religion.
Probably because it's created by those people, right?
What's that?
Probably because it's created by those people, right?
I have
maybe people who funded it, or like actually created the buildings themselves, decided to put that there,
like a state courthouse.
Yeah, like if it was funded in part, or if it was created by a certain people or designed. Like what's wrong with them setting that up?
So then, do you think that do you think it would be okay if again? I mean, we can always go to something different. Like it seems like you're willing to make this exception for something like like Christianity. But I mean, what if it was like a courthouse that was like done in like the style of like a Moloch or something, where you have you really care?
Congress says,
I think that's fair for you to say now, but like whether you care about that or not, if that's the case, then like you must acknowledge that like building an entire courthouse where anybody, even people who might be opposed to that religion, are going to be like brought to justice, that might be an enormous bias of them having to walk into a building that's completely draped in that iconography.
I mean, you're making assumptions there, though. You just assume that like just because there might be a cross on like or a Jesus statuine somewhere in a courthouse that like they're going to be.
But I mean, this is
like,
not a this is not like a small thing. Like these many courthouses in the United States. I mean, this is a well established issue. Like it's not.
No, you implied
I mean,
bias
maybe you
by
don't
the
know
judge.
about it.
Okay, one at a time.
So what Sushi asks, Constitution says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Isn't it respecting an establishment of religion to put in New York State courthouses, "In God We Trust"?
Did Congress make that law?
Well, that's incorporated to the states through incorporation doctrine. We understand Bill of Rights largely to apply to the states through incorporation doctrine. It wouldn't be a defense.
Sure, but you said, but specific, like, right. What I'm pointing out is fundamentally in like, and this is not to be challenging the notion that the state should not endorse religion, because I agree with you, right? But what I think is important to note is then where do we draw the line between what is largely a large cultural piece of our society, quite honestly, like in terms of there was a fair amount of Christians that were involved in founding in the United States, and they have a fair presence in the daily life. And so while I'm not saying that we need to say, yes, this is a government endorsement, however, I mean, largely speaking, God is used in I guess, a vague sense for many countries. And so, you know, I'm not saying that, yes, okay, I'm not blind. I see this is correlated to Christianity. I guess the question is then the objective then to just completely remove that aspect of our history from all courthouses or all groups? Because I don't think that this is an endorsement by government, but rather a creation of the people who are ruling themselves. Are they not? I mean,
It's not
to me,
history,
it seems like
though.
That's not.
It can still be there in history. Just it shouldn't be there now.
So
okay, and that's
all
a
paper
different
money,
story.
all paper money or coins and things of this nature, they need to be taken out, fucking destroyed, and remade without the floribus unum under it.
I mean, this is
that?
sort of an argument from.
We do that all the
But this
time.
is sort of an argument from privilege, isn't it? Like you're just saying that it just so happens that a religion that you're very. I mean, it is ultimately it is a religious privilege. If you're like, I happen to exist in a country where the religion that I agree with or that I'm most comfortable with is printed all over the money, you're ultimately just saying it's okay because that's the way that it is. But I mean, like there's. Like that's still the state endorsing a religion, whether you like it or not. Like the reason why we have these sort of principles is so that we can prevent other things. Like keep in mind that like the reason why the state is not supposed to be involved in religion is because it's a potential major corrupting influence, that there have been theocracies in the past that have used state power to persecute their religious enemies, and that was something that our founding fathers were specifically trying to avoid.
I just find it pretty interesting that like are you insinuating that we're in the theocracy? Like we already have like the separation of churches. We just respect the rights, and I have it codified into law some protections for those people.
I find it interesting that you're bucking against like the symbology of like Christianity on things like money. Like you're like, no, we can't do that. That'd be silly.
No,
but I feel like
are you going to do that? I said, are you advocating?
I'm 100% for that.
Okay.
So that you can reconcile that with the idea that the state doesn't sponsor any specific religion. I do not feel like you would. I don't feel like you'd be on this side.
Let him finish.
I don't feel like you'd be on this side of the argument if we were founded by Muslims. I feel like,
that's a bullshit assumption. I'm not.
I really don't think so. I really don't.
Satanists.
Yeah, that's like an attack.
Well, let him. Okay. Everybody, sushi. Everybody. Okay. I want to. That was obviously. What is it? Sushi. What do you think I'm about to do?
No, I didn't.
Sushi. What do you think I'm about to do?
You did.
Sushi, please respond. I wanted to make sure everybody quiet down so you'd be able to respond to that. That was directed at you.
Dog, like that's obviously throwing shade and assuming he's like, oh, I think he would be kind of against it if it was founded by Muslims. That's insinuating I'm a fucking Islamophobe, dude.
I don't think it insinuates
and also
Islamophobia.
It's the second part of it, right? Like, dude, when they say in God we trust, they didn't say in Christian God, they didn't say in Yahweh, they said in God we trust, which is an entity that is respected by any fucking religion. It could be gods, whatever. And like even like in Hinduism,
not true.
That's not polytheist.
That's not true.
Not polytheist,
not atheist, not Native American.
Actually, it's pretty interesting you bring up polytheism. Like with the largest polytheistic religion is like obviously like Hinduism, and you don't understand that they actually all like apparently this is in their mythos. They all fucking branch off from the same center God. So yes, like, at least initially, like it is one solid God. So what are you talking?
Not really.
Are you construing Hinduism as monotheistic?
That's not how it works. Proto-Hinduism started in the Harappan Valley, like the Harappan Valley, where Pakistan and India now border each other, and they have records of that proto-religion going vastly into not monotheism.
No, I'm saying
It serves many different.
Wait a minute.
No.
Even
The
if-
literal proto-religion of Hinduism shows many gods. It's just anthropological fact.
Okay,
I mean,
whatever.
but doesn't
Like,
this kind of
God
illustrate
matter.
exactly what we were talking
Like,
about, though? That-
Well,
wait.
I do want to let Sushi respond. This has been a back and forth.
It's just
and then
personally
I'll
what
get
I was
around to
taught
it.
by a friend, I mean, anecdotal Andy, but like a good friend of mine who does believe in the Hindu faith, and he's the one who taught me. Like, he's like, it comes from one centralized god that was broken up, and there's a lot more. But whatever. I don't fucking investigate that shit. I don't have a study Bible for Hinduism. I have a study Bible for Christianity.
Okay, Dario, you've had your hand raised, and then after I'll throw it over to Demon Mama.
Yeah, so I guess in the interest of not making this just like an anti-sushi show, actually I did agree with one thing that Sushi said during his opening, and I'm curious like where other people stand on this. So like in the case of like the religious bakery or whatever example, I think I stand on the side of that whenever you're doing an artistic craft or something that is specifically like artistic in some kind of way, I do think you should be able to, I guess, deny service for whatever reason, because I guess you're applying your artistic vision to whatever it is you're creating, right? And like forcing somebody to be artistic isn't really like a good way to structure society, I think.
What about Taco Bell?
All private businesses have the right to refuse service. Okay.
Really?
So, but if you're a private business owner, you personally have the right to refuse service. So if you're a fucking franchisee, you can't refuse service to somebody based on your own personal beliefs as a manager. Okay, those are different things, and let's not try to equivocate the two. No, not
That's
why.
not what equivocate means.
They're different entities. Okay, they're just 100% different entities, and you can't try to like push them together as such. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, like, anybody should have the right to refuse service to anyone. Okay, plain and simple. If it's not a utility, if it's not an essential, like good, like you can't fucking like say, oh, this
That's
is a
not
black
how we
family.
define the establishments in the law.
Yeah, no.
That's not how we define the establishments in law by utility. There's employers, and they have a certain number of employee threshold.
Are there businesses that provide like an essential utility for someone to live in America?
So what's essential? So what about like Best Buy?
like housing, electricity?
What about Best Buy? What about restaurants?
Like restaurants, people have the right to refuse service, but you can't be. There's not a right to refuse.
You should be able to. Wait. So I'm contrary to federal law. If you're a restaurant with above the threshold for number of employees and all the other requirements, and you're subject to Title VII and the Civil Rights Act, it's your belief that you should be able to, in contravenance of that law, deny people service on the basis of their race, sex, or other protected class. Is that your position?
I feel like you're trying to misappropriate what I'm saying. Once
That's
again,
like literally
private businesses, if they are owned and operated by a religious sect, I don't care what fucking religion you're a part
Do
of.
they have to be religious?
For instance, if we're talking about religion, let's not.
But do they have to be religious? Like, can I own a business and deny you service?
I already fucking said that. If you
All right, so religion is essential.
I have no issue with a gay baker fucking refusing service to a Christian, like an outright Christian.
Okay, so then say that. So say that it's religiously based, and I'm assuming that your foundation is out of the First Amendment, correct? Otherwise, there would be no reason to have a distinction, right?
Continue.
Okay, so since it's based on the First Amendment, I asked the question again: why not make religious institutions free from criminal laws? Why should religious individuals?
Slippery slope fallacy.
No. You have to answer the question. What's your limiting principle? So I ask you: there are religious people in this country, devout people, who think taxation is against their core religious beliefs. Wait, it's against their religious beliefs.
I'm happy to answer that part as well, because I think I have.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I'll get Red Gray in a beer.
So when it comes to, I guess, the question that you're asking there is like, where does the religious rights, I guess, essentially be superseded by any other form of right? And I think it really kind of comes down to when inalienable rights are overridden. So in the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? All those three components, I think, are what should determine, I guess, I just saw Sushi drinking water. That when you have a law essentially that effectuates a violation of those fundamental inalienable rights, I think that's where you draw the line. Otherwise, the services that are provided, are up to the right of the individual to deliver them as such. And quite honestly, I think that it's a healthy system because it allows for people to identify those that may be bigots, quite honestly. Because I think that in society, you have a lot of these individuals
that's a side constraint. You're saying it could be useful in other ways. It's not really the question.
No, you vote for your wallet. Culture is real, and like people who.
Well, I responded to your statement, though.
No, you
right?
didn't actually.
No, I said that laws should not impede upon the fundamental inalienable right for the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness.
And property is one of those, by the way. So property, so the due process clause protects life, liberty, and property. You know, your money is your property in some sense. Why should be, so then the taxation example should work. People who are religious, who have religious exemptions to taxation, shouldn't be taxed in this country.
No, because taxation is that essentially you're questioning whether or not taxation infringes upon inalienable rights, and that's a different topic.
Well,
okay, so then
you construe it as life, liberty, property,
unconstitutional. Is that what you're implying? Because that's what the route you're going down.
No, that's not the rabbit hole I'm going down. That's the rabbit hole you're going down. So you're saying that religious exemption should be allowed for things that that don't violate other people's, life, liberty, or property or something.
Fundamental rights, yeah.
Okay, so in this case, the only thing that's up for debate is whether this individual should pay taxes. No one else, I guess, is being harmed, right? Except for the loss in tax revenue. And now you're saying that this person who has a devout belief that he shouldn't be taxed, it's part of his religion, should nonetheless be taxed.
Once again,
his religion. What's that?
So then you're saying that
he also says it mentioned individual. When I said religious institutions should not be taxed.
Now it matters how many people. So now you think the First Amendment has a stronger application.
A religious institution shouldn't be taxed because the way they get revenue is purely through charitable donations. It's not. It's not
the question of no. The question of taxation of religious institutions is separate from the question of whether you should have an exemption for existing taxes.
I gotta jump in here because Demon Mama was trying to speak like 20 minutes ago, and Jake, I will throw it over to you right after. Promise. Demon Mama.
I mean, I'll be completely honest. I think the main points that I was going to talk on have kind of drifted, but I do have something to say nonetheless, which is, I mean, we structure our civil rights law to protect people based on sort of unalienable traits, like things that are part of their, essential traits about their personality. We talked about this before in another conversation, that religion isn't one of those. And while I will agree with what Dario brought up, that there are certain circumstances, certain, like, for example, direct commissions, like an artist shouldn't be expected to have to comply with a direct commission for something they don't agree with. I mean, as far as I understand it, those sort of protections already exist, and that for the most part, most of these sorts of civil rights protections that we have are based on organizations that are of a certain size or that are doing certain types of business.
Interstate commerce.
Yeah, exactly. Where they're crossing certain lines where, hey, this is somebody who's engaging with society to a certain degree where we can say it's fair for us to say you can't discriminate on based on these things. And I know people always want to go back to the cake, but there's like a number of examples you could talk about with this. Like, I mean, would it be okay
doing
for
art, paintings?
Yeah. Like, I mean, there's certain, but I think most like direct commissions and things like that are already well protected by that. And then when you get to other things, like, for example, like a film, there are all kinds of protections that have to be going into making a film. That's a collaborative process. And for example, even though a film is a piece of art, there could very well be evidence of and action taken on, say, discriminating, like if they fire or they refuse to hire anybody of a specific race to be in a film just because. Like, we can, like, a lot of this argument seems to hinge on like the idea that like that you can come to no sense of evidence about discrimination. But the truth is that if every single person who belongs to a specific group, or if a number of people who belong visibly to a specific group of a protected class are being discriminated against, that's something that we should be able to stand against as a country that believes in liberty.
I want to throw it over to ActualJake. Dario, I see your hand.
Yeah, I thought it was just particularly interesting that you thought religious exemption is like extends to people that make money through pure donations, which means that I should definitely not be taxed ever again, because that's how I make my living, and it's a good living. I do okay. I can't buy a jet or anything, and
LLC, and when you run that, you make money. You're not.
Actually, as a note, the government does not clarify Twitch donations as a charitable donation. Welcome to the IRS.
That's right. Why so many people move.
Besides the point.
That's not the idea,
I'm just
right?
making a comment, right? I'm just pointing it out.
Or the Streamlabs donations, or any of the other kinds of things that happen through me. Like, Like, it's just direct deposit to my bank account is like pretty obviously a donation. So I'm just tossing it out there. Like, I mean, depends on it depends, because I've been doing this for years. So some of them, are actually just strict donations. It just depends on which ones you do. Like Twitch specifically, when you sign the partner program, they agree to taxation as well. But like you're technically contracted through Twitch and through YouTube and stuff like that as well. But like, for instance, Destiny, RIP. Destiny. He has like his own website and stuff that people donate directly to him, and it's arguable whether or not he should pay taxes on that, because it's very specifically something he set up for direct donation. So I just think in the future, when you argue religious exemption, you shouldn't bring that up. It's not a good idea. It's not a good argument.
Yeah, I think.
Anyway, okay, go ahead, Dario.
I thought it was my turn. I don't know. I don't know if Dylan wants to throw it. Yeah. So I just, I guess I wanted to build a bit on what Demon Mama said, and I think to extrapolate that into like language that everybody can get behind. Well, mostly everybody on this panel, at least, is that I think the general rule is that, or the general rule that people are trying to abide by is that the bigger something is, like the more influence it has in society, like the bigger company, the bigger the bigger the monopoly they have on a market, the stricter the rules should apply for that in terms of like serving the public good, because they take part in society and take advantage of the goods of that society they exist in, right? So
but why, on a principle basis, why do you make that distinction?
Well,
size matter.
I feel like I just said so. I feel like I just said so.
Listen, I mean, so you have a business of 100 employees and one of 90. Sure. You just decide that 100 is enough. At that point, it affects society enough that we should have.
It's a threshold. Well, it's a threshold, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously it's an arbitrary. Well, I mean, what do you want? Like, do you want an exact mathematical number?
I don't know.
No, all of these they're all arbitrary thresholds.
I think it's totally. I don't know why it should apply. We should only apply neutral laws of general applicability to institutions with more than 100 employees. I think neutral laws of general applicability should apply to everybody.
Okay, so Pisco, where do you stand on the what's your prescriptive statement for like the baker? Like, do you think the baker should be required to bake a cake, or like an artist should be required to accept commissions to do something that they disagree with?
It depends what's the ordinance that's being violated. If it's a neutral law that says nobody shall deny to any person based on XXX their commission, then and if it's not specific to any religion, I think they should have to provide that service or face lawsuit.
Okay, so
specific tailored regulation that says you're
right. So I think a bunch of fucking suited Nazis walking into an Olive Garden should absolutely be allowed service.
Somebody wait. What does that sound?
Kurt. It's Kurt.
Oh. Kurt. What do you? Kurt. Mute yourself. I'll mute you. There you go. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm confused, Pisco. So what you're saying, so what you're basically saying is, if there's an artist, like an artist just does commissions, like they're like a single, like they do freelance or whatever, like the state should go in and tell them, you need to make this kind of art that was requested by this kind of person.
Well, all I'm saying is that there shouldn't be an exemption to any neutral law that prohibits it. So if the state thinks it's a bad idea to tell small artists not to do anything, then if it's neutral and applies to all small artists, it should apply to religious small artists. That's all.
But like, what is your prescriptive statement, right? Like, is your argument just like whatever is the law, whatever's the law is the law? Like, I'm asking, what do you think?
So as I understand the topic is, I don't want specific religious exemptions to neutral laws. I could have an issue that I don't want the state telling any artist what to do, and so I don't want any law saying that artists have to do anything, right? So, and I probably am more with you on that. But I just don't want any religious artist saying I get special protection, is all I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just trying to get where you're coming from.
My bad.
Yeah. Okay.
To clarify my position, I think that's fairly reasonable. Like, I don't think any particular religious group should get a special exemption.
And they do, though. Like, that's the thing.
They do.
I think that,
I don't think we're arguing. I'm not arguing that it's happening. Right?
Yeah. But it's just, I just think that like in a lot of these conversations, people in the position, like people in the position of more favorable on the side of the religious liberty side of things, often tend to dance around the fact that as of right now, there are a lot of religions that do get special treatment. There are a lot of people who use that special treatment. And not even that, there's sometimes where they shouldn't be getting special treatment even under the existing law. And yet there is an enforcement problem specifically because of a bias in their direction, which should be investigated and should be confronted. Like, I mean, I find, for example, I know that this was a bit ago, Sushi brought up, I think, dollar bills and having In God We Trust. I absolutely believe that all dollar bills that are printed and reprinted in the future should not have that sort of religious iconography on it. Absolutely not.
He's trying to put you in a weird...
Trust in God.
But he's trying to put you in a weird position.
Unfortunately.
So Demon Mama, he's trying to say, "Oh, you're insane. You want to get everyone to give their monies to banks right now at this moment," and that's not what any of us are saying. You can do things in steps. And
there's all kinds of practical ways that you can do these things. Like, I'm not saying that you need to destroy every single one, but I mean,
if you wanted to change the money, that's all I said.
Absolutely, 100%. We should change the money. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We should absolutely not have it. Like, we should not have it normalized that even if you want to use this like very, very in my opinion, incredibly weak, like sort of monotheistic thingamajig that people say is, oh, well, many religions actually believe in. Well, no, actually, many religions do not. And many people don't believe in any religion at all. And that means they shouldn't have that religion imposed upon them by the state. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that we're going to always be like perfect about it. And there's going to be areas where bias, for example, the fact that the United States and its laws has always been and is still to this day biased towards Protestant Christianity.
And white landowning men.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, of course.
I have a question for you when you're ready, Demon.
Yeah, but like we should, when we find an example of this, we should support fixing it. Like, there's always going to be some that may drip through or some that may be somewhat problematic, but stuff like prominently displaying the 10 commandments, which are not the basis for our laws at all, is ridiculous. And so is having things like In God We Trust on our money when there's many people who simply don't. It helps to reinforce a sort of invisible, like dominant hegemonic culture. And I don't think that's okay. I don't think we should do that. I don't think our state should be doing that purpose.
The Pledge of Allegiance is a thing too.
Yeah, Pledge of Allegiance is pretty lit. Anyway, so do you it's actually amazing. And I do think there should be a hegemonic culture. I think American exceptionalism is the best. Anyway, I have a question for you. Since there's I have a question. Like, in my opinion, either we allow people to have protections or no one has protections. That's the way I look at it, right? But I have a question for you. Let's say let's say there is a I don't know, a Jewish deli, and it's the only deli around, and you wanted to order some non-kosher meat, and they only offer kosher stuff. Would you mandate by law that they have to serve those things? There's no reason.
Wait a second, hold on a minute. I've had this conversation before. This is the Muhammad-shaped crepe.
Well, it's not even that. It's like Pizza Hut. That's like saying hot dogs.
Yeah, does Pizza Hut
exactly? They just don't have it. They just don't have the thing. It's okay if they don't have the thing.
Yeah, but they provide the service, right? Or else it's considered to be discriminatory.
No, that's dumb.
What are you talking about?
No, that's like saying about the fucking argument.
No.
Okay. One more time. Everybody's talking at the same time. Okay. Okay. Wait. Suspect. Come on. Okay. You know the rules, Suspect. When I talk, everybody gets quiet, okay? I'm going to let you respond, then I'm going to let Tiberius go, and then I'm going to have everybody engage with your point. I'm going to let Tiberius go because he's been waiting for a while, but you can respond, Sushi.
You don't force business owners to make any type of decision based on what the customer desires, right? Like, they have the right to take their fucking business elsewhere. You have the right to be on social media and be like, hey, they refuse service to me, this and that. You should vote with your wallet. The fact that a bunch of religious people have an issue with religion, oh, big fucking shocker. It's not like, and also like religious communities have been oppressed historically across the board. So why wouldn't there be religious protections put in place and codified in the law? I just don't find that is not. What do you mean that's not true?
You're just saying
that's not. What do you mean that's not true? Every religion on the planet has been oppressed at some point in time.
Well, the banal statement of like it's boring. I mean, the question is, based on your theory of like everyone should have the choice to contract however they want, there shouldn't be Title VII. There shouldn't be Civil Rights Act, right?
How about no one has protections and everybody vote with their wallet?
So businesses should be able to refuse service to you based on race.
Sure. and then
Okay.
I would
No.
make sure that
That's not the
everybody in
position I
my
have.
community know, and I would make sure everybody in my community would fucking know that they may refuse service based on race, and that would severely harm their
No, it
ability to
wouldn't.
financially
So the
profit.
Civil Rights Act was
So many
bad, right?
MAGA hat wearing idiots out there that be like, "Fuck yeah, I'm getting hot dogs at the racist place."
This argument is so silly because
That's
it's
pretty
basically
interesting.
your argument would also assert
They
that the way that you framed the argument that's being made is that Burger King should be legally required to serve a Big Mac to you. That's not how
no,
that
it's,
works.
no, it's not. No, it's not.
Really
No,
different
I'm saying that everybody should be
your
equal under
argument
the
is
law.
absurd and it isn't serious. And you
Everyone, no,
make
no.
it every time
Everyone
it's
should be
not
equal under the law, but to insinuate that fucking a private business owner can't actually choose to run their business how they want to me is ridiculous and usually sounds like people who don't.
Wait. Tiberius, you've been waiting for a very long time to speak. What do you want to say?
Appreciate that, Dylan. So, Sushi, I'm gonna try to reach out the olive branch, and yes, I'm biased as fuck. So, I'll try to give you credit here. What is a religious freedom that would probably not be covered in other freedoms that you think is still legitimate that doesn't pound on somebody else?
What is a religious freedom that doesn't infringe on the rights of someone else?
Yeah, that isn't covered under freedom of speech or whatever.
Well, actually, I mean, the way I look at it is, let's see here. I don't know, adherence to the Sabbath, I guess, for some people, things of the nature of Ramadan or the fasting periods and things of this nature. I mean, there's a lot of different things that people that are in with people's religious wheelhouses that they adhere to on a day-to-day basis that I think that should be mutually respected. For instance, people who have to pray to Mecca and things of this nature, you should make accommodations for that person if that person works for you. These aren't things that are directly said in laws, but there are definitely accommodations that can be made as a discerning private business owner. And if you don't do that, people should know that you're not as tolerant towards a certain group of people.
That's
Why
not
have
what
any
he
laws?
asked. That's
Why
not
have
what he
any laws
asked.
regarding business?
He asked about the
let
First
me
Amendment.
take this one. I mean, it's my question.
Sure.
So, I want to kind of rephrase this, and maybe I'm not getting your point here. Is you're Christian. I assume you want to work. You don't want to work on Sundays. And do you think it should be mandated by the government that an employer respects that qualification for you? Okay.
No.
So what should the government do here? That's the problem I'm having here.
I think we're basically the only thing that the federal government really has a part to play in when it comes to religious institutions is to make sure that that their personal religious beliefs aren't being infringed upon or being mandated by action. For instance, there's the current law. There's a current Supreme Court battle with a nuns who are basically trying to fight against the Catholic nuns who are trying to fight against.
They're trying to fight.
They're trying to have taxes not go to abortion or something along those lines, and I think that's perfectly fine.
The Catholic institutions are saying none of your anti-discrimination laws apply to us, and under your contract theory of laissez-faire everything, and everyone should have the right to contract however they want. What's the basis of the government having any regulation? I mean, what's the government's job in telling me that I have to have clean bathrooms or clean food or have any kind of standards?
It's not the same thing as having a fundamental disbelief. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. Dude, no. You're asking. Dude, it's not the same thing as saying hey, our religion is about the preservation, of fellow Catholics, future Catholics, whatever, and we don't agree with abortion and stuff like that. And you're hey, by the way, when we fucking tax you, this shit's going to Planned Parenthood.
Remove yourself from the religious context. You already removed yourself from it. You said you don't agree with the 1964 Civil Rights Act, that people should be free to discriminate on the basis of race.
I said people should be equal to the law, but I also said that a private business owner should be allowed to refuse service to you on any metric that they choose. No, it's not any metric they choose, but that has nothing to do with race. But it doesn't disenfranchise someone from voting or being treated the same.
But it does. Okay. Let me just bring something up here real quick, because there's been this sort of signaling towards this idea of a single culture and all this things. What keeps coming back to is that this argument comes from the fact that you're the beneficiary of this right now. That keep in mind that you would have not, at one point in history, you would have not been considered part of that hegemonic structure that you advocated for just a bit ago. And this is what we're talking about in this, that the idea that, that you can allow for religions to discriminate on other people allows them to use institutional power, use rights that are granted to them by the government against people that they happen to disagree with. And as it turns out, religions often disagree with a lot of different people. And I think there is something, I don't think it should be hand waved. The idea that like the Catholic Church, a non-state organization that has its own entire structure, is trying to pull back the rights despite also engaging in the American healthcare industry. That's a wild thing to try and hand wave, that they are offering healthcare. They are building, they might have a hospital in an area that might be the only hospital that some people have access to. And what, are we just going to allow them to just refuse non-Catholic service? Or do we have to accept that there is a bargain, a social contract that has to be made between all of the people in a society that says, hey, if you're going to be offering a so-called public good, you can't discriminate based on these intrinsic traits. And that does mean that certain types of businesses, some of which you might not consider essential, are going to be held to anti-discrimination laws. Otherwise, you end up just with a state that's capable of wielding power to persecute whoever it wants.
Can I ask a question about that last comment that you had said there about essential businesses? Just
sure.
to understand a little bit deeper.
After this
Dylan?
exchange, though, could we please include Dario and Jake, who Dario's been waiting for a while, and Jake also wants to go.
I'll make it real quick, just make sure I understand
need to use the
this
bathroom,
right.
so Geek, you got the reins, okay?
Regarding the example you had mentioned, a hospital being in a region, and obviously if it's the only hospital, it would be the essential service. So are you essentially just saying that it should apply to all businesses and not just essential services, as Sushi has mentioned? Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure I understand this correctly.
It's one example, I think, that if the restaurant isn't food is a common essential service that people need. If that's not included, why not include hospitals?
I'm not disenfranchised by not being refused service by the fucking.
What does disenfranchisement mean to you? You know, enfranchisement means voting, right?
Like, my rights are being imputed upon when I fucking get refused service by Outback.
Maybe.
So your rights aren't being infringed when a Catholic hospital says we don't serve gays here. I mean, how can you deny them that right?
I don't think you can, right? And I think that goes right down to the big.
Well, I mean,
no, that's what I'm saying is it goes against the rights I mentioned earlier. You cannot discriminate against something that would impede their ability to have life, liberty, etc.
What
right?
if there's only one?
From my understanding, there has been.
I agree with you. That's what I'm saying is they cannot discriminate on that because that is a fundamental issue.
So now your religious rights for a grocery store depends on how many other grocery stores are around you. So you
I didn't say that. All I'm saying is that anything that is an essential service should not be discriminated upon. Right? That's all I'm saying.
So similarly situated religious services, just based on the other number of services around them, could be treated differently and have their religious rights in one case respected. In the other case, you say, no, your religious rights go secondary to because you're essential by our determination of the state.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it does beg a lot of questions, and I'm not sure how you exactly standardize that.
It's crazy.
But isn't that exactly the system that's before right now? Right? And that's the balance that we have.
Why is it? Wait. I disagree that it's unworkable, right? I mean, you can make case by case decisions that go to like courts or whatever that get appealed and stuff like. I don't think it's unworkable.
Philosophically, it's unworkable.
Why?
Well, I don't think.
Wait,
I don't
it's
think
not.
that's reason. I don't think that's reasonable anyway, though,
reasonable.
because
I mean,
well, no. I mean, what Dario's saying, because you say you can go to courts to determine who can use the hospital, but I mean, like,
no, I actually have something to respond to directly.
Isn't that like in the ER? Well, how do you make that a call? You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
like,
yeah, no, I don't know.
So I don't think it's functional at all.
To my understanding, there is no hospital that refuses emergency services to anyone due to like the Hippocratic.
That's a banal fact.
But hold on. But it's more so about elective surgeries or things of this nature for like either people who may be gay or another religion or a different gender. Or,
you have to stop you. You're making the boring point that it doesn't happen.
Are they taking money from the government? If they're taking money from the government, they're not a privately funded hospital. They are beholden to different laws and regulations.
To existing societies to receive a benefit from the government.
There's something really important I want to bring up here, which is this sort of, again, it's a little bit of a hand wave here, but to say that like it's just elective surgeries or whatever that are being refused is kind of silly, because keep in mind that like I mean, at one point at one point AIDS was originally called gay-related immunodeficiency disorder or syndrome, and people like at the time, which was based off of incorrect information, that was considered a condition that you got from your lifestyle. And there were at that time Catholic organizations that were pushing to say we shouldn't have to deal with people who partake in a sinful lifestyle that the church disapproves of. Why should we offer them medical care? And you
Don't
see,
you think it's considerably more different though? Like they're stabbed on the side of the street
I
to
don't
provide
think it is.
services to them, but if they're looking for consistent service from a hospital that doesn't agree with their lifestyle, that's not the same thing.
No,
Totally
I don't think that the hospitals should be allowed to judge their lifestyle. That's the difference. The standards that I believe is that if you're going to be engaging in most types of business, and I would argue that there's a lot more types of what would be considered essential business than you'd think. But if you're going to engage in that, we need to build standards that protect from these things happening, because the cost of them happening is lives, and the opposite is just the inconvenience or financial inconvenience of a religious organization that has decided to engage in a certain venture.
So, do all institutions and businesses need to be publicly owned and funded, in your opinion? Does private ownership mean anything in any capacity?
It's not necessary for our argument.
No,
I mean,
Demon, I'm not talking to you,
okay,
Demon.
to be fair,
I would
to be
absolutely
fair,
love it if we could live in a society where all businesses were publicly or socially owned, but that's not quite what we're talking about.
Okay,
here.
well, like it just seemed like a very
All right, I'm
consistent.
just gonna jump in.
Like it just seemed inconsistent that you weren't like respecting the rights of a private citizen to do with what they will when it comes to their own personal.
It seems like you're
But I mean,
biased
okay,
against
you're saying those words, but you've not actually
Wait.
private citizen
Okay,
anyway.
let's Jake. You've been wanting to say something. I've seen you trying to get in.
Well, I mean, you say it's all about the private citizen, but earlier you just bitched about like Christian people having taxes go to things that are specifically anti-Christian, like for instance abortion. But it's like atheists and other non-religious people or people that just disagree with Christianity in general have to fucking pay property taxes towards schools that you say the very based and totally dope Pledge of Allegiance, which specifically advocates the Christian God. Like this is not an okay thing for you to take the side of one group of people while saying it's on behalf of all individual liberties, because clearly there is a ridiculous bias toward those that believe in biblical Christianity, notwithstanding that your stance on how biblical Christianity extends to the ethics of hospitals, it runs literally in the opposite direction of anything that is preached in the Bible insofar as how we ought to treat people ethically that are our neighbors that we might disagree with, specifically from the little red words in the Bible that I'm sure you've read all of. You are specifically disagreeing with Jesus in defense of Christianity. It's just wild to me. Like
no, like no.
100% you are.
No. Like the fact that
Yes.
like no, dude, elective surgeries and emergency medical services are not the same exact thing. If you're being denied one and given the other with no questions asked, it's not the same thing. Why are you making the same?
Where do you base that distinction from? Where does that come from, legally or ethically, morally? Where does that come from?
Okay, so the Hippocratic Oath shows that, like, do no harm, and like you provide services like that are like that when someone's life is in danger and things of this nature. So if I'm fucking stabbed on the side of the street and I get pulled into a hospital, regardless if it's a Catholic, Christian, Jewish, Muslim hospital, they have an obligation to provide baseline medical services to at least preserve my life. Now, after I'm patched up and then I get kicked out, like if I wanted to go back later to get my appendix removed or some shit, actually no, that's what I'm, because it could actually be life threatening. For let's just say I wanted cosmetic surgery from your fucking
Do you
Jewish
think general
hospital.
practitioners give you cosmetic surgery?
No, I said a hospital. Whatever.
Is it-
I don't know. I'm trying to
Is that
use
how
an
you think
analogy.
hospitals work?
No.
Wait,
I was just trying to use an
this is
analogy.
also-
Basically,
yeah,
One at a time. Let's just
elective
respond.
surgeries are not an essential service within the hospital sphere.
Where did you?
Name
What
what's
does
a
essential
medical
mean to you?
right? What's a medical situation that's not essential in your opinion?
You want the government deciding what's essential? What
That
if
takes place in a hospital.
we consider treatment of STIs to be non-essential? What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with treating STIs? Like you can get
No, we refuse to treat STIs for gay people, and STIs are non-essential. So we can discriminate on the basis.
So the issue here,
Is that right?
the
Already
issue
provided.
here is
Who cares?
I'm not
the
asking if
issue-
it's provided. I'm asking your philosophical take.
the issue here is, I feel like we keep hammering Sushi on something that like nobody can really answer, right? So like the issue is that everything has like an arbitrary limit in society, right? Whatever we consider essential and non-essential, all of that is like arbitrarily decided.
No,
by the
Dario, I
state
don't make
currently.
that distinction. That's a silly distinction to say.
I can
arbitrary and
answer.
I
non-
mean, it's
I don't make that distinction. You're wrong that we're arguing about
I
where
can
the
answer
line.
the question. Is also that you said I couldn't answer.
So
no limits on medical care.
well, sure,
That's
but
the
like
answer.
what about other stuff? Like
No
like
limits.
I mean, no limits on anything.
On medical care, yeah.
Sure, okay. What about food? What about I don't know, housing?
I think that food should be provided regardless of religious claim to discrimination. And seemingly, if you ask Suspect Sushi,
It's pretty interesting. Food pantries are most predominantly run by religious organizations and do not discriminate. with their charitable
this is bad faith. At one hand, you were putting forth Demon Mama's belief in public institutions and waving your hand at that, and now you're waving the hand at a lot of.
Where's the bad faith? Where's the bad faith?
I'm not addressing the point, which is you said yourself that the freedom to contract, let it work out in the marketplace. People should be able to discriminate and be able to tell their friends they discriminate.
Food pantries regularly discriminate, for the record.
What? So
Regular.
so
Interesting.
so quickly. Do you only
when I was having to go to food pantries pretty consistently in my life?
Your experience is totally encapsulated of all possible experiences that exist, right?
I know for
Do
a
you
fact
only-
that they did. I know for a fact that they don't let trans people in if they know they're trans.
Oh yeah, I
Interesting.
mean, in fact, to just to touch on that one a little bit. In fact, once again, we've seen the state engage in favorable treatment. In fact, the Department of Health and Human Services, I think I always get the name mixed up a little bit, published a memo that guided that apparently would guide Christian institutions on how to identify and discriminate against trans people. To me, that seems like not only is that the state aiding and endorsing a religion, but also is incredibly, incredibly dangerous and goes against the purported cause of these organizations. And these
That's
are very
bad.
serious
I don't
things.
know, like
And
I don't know if
yeah,
you wanted me to
of course it
disagree with
is,
that, but that's bad. I don't know what to tell you.
Wait, but that being bad, but these sort of things are commonplace under the system that you're advocating for, under this system that puts the religious freedoms
Zero
first
regulations,
instead of instead of the well-being and the equitability of our systems. We have to put those systems before people's individual religious, aka I would argue that religious views are akin to political views. They're very strongly held views, and that means that if you're engaging in certain parts of our society, I mean, for example, like imagine the sort of like sort of Wild West that would occur if you allowed like healing rooms or something like that to be completely unregulated. If it was just completely unregulated for a church to claim that they can offer you healing and then charge you for that service as if they're a hospital, you can imagine how wild and out of control that would get very quickly.
That literally is the case in some of the Western states where they allow faith healing, specifically in kids dying, but the parents aren't on the hook for that because they allow things like that. And kids die constantly from faith healing, specifically in the Mormon sects or the Seventh-day Adventist area, like Utah, Colorado, stuff like that. That's a big problem over there. Idaho.
Can I ask you a question, Jake? So
Yep.
so you said like all medical services should be like considered essential and should be like given, right, to like anybody who requests.
Because specifically I wouldn't have privatized healthcare, right?
Well,
So-
sure. But like we agreed that there's like a limit there as well in terms of like practicality, right? So when you spend doctors
practicality
or
if
surgeons,
if it's within the bounds of like medical capability, yeah. But I mean,
well, no. So I mean, sure, but like also so I live in Denmark, right? And we do have like public healthcare. Well, we also have like private healthcare options, but like generally we have public healthcare, right? But like you won't just get like any service that you want, right? Because there's like a limited amount of doctors, there's a limited amount of like time, there's a limited amount of surgeons, right? So,
but this is the
discrimination. It's not about
right, but it's also,
well,
but also
sure,
the,
but
the
like
myth. This is a myth that this is a thing that Americans do when they're for private healthcare. Specifically, they have this myth of like of frivolous medical care where that's not really a thing people seek. People don't like to go to the dentist that often. People don't like to get like extra stuff they don't need most of the time. You do have some people that are like, for instance, addicted to plastic surgery, and that's probably a problem. But because my view on this is that mental health care is involved in healthcare specifically, they would have the counseling necessary to understand that maybe this is an addictive personality disorder,
Sure.
maybe there's an issue here. So like it pretty much defeats itself if you just have a comprehensive healthcare system.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't disagree with like the
Sure.
practicality of the matter, right? I just wanted to, I guess try and give like a devil's advocate take for like why we
Sure.
generally do like prioritize certain kinds of like care and stuff. And
Well,
I
of
mean,
course, you should. I mean, triage is real and should be happening. Like you shouldn't be going like, okay, well we have cancer patients, but this guy really wants his ass implants today. Like obviously you push him back a little bit, but like just saying that, I don't think guy that wants ass implants needs to be denied because he wants an ass implant. There could be maybe he slides off all the chairs he sits. I have no fucking idea. What
And
he's
you
like,
want to
so-
be someone partly pays for that, right?
No, but
Wait,
the
wait, wait,
prioritization
Who gives
decision
a
has
shit?
no.
I already pay for your ass to ignore masks and shit like that. So like, why wouldn't I pay for someone
Why do you
else's
make that
healthcare?
supposition? Why do you make
Ah.
that decision for him?
Interesting.
Sushi, whether or not you prioritize certain healthcare things in general has no bearing on whether you should allow discrimination in those less important healthcare services. The question on the table is, should religious people and religious institutions have rights to discriminate? And you're
Yeah.
saying that yes, they should. I don't know where the distinction now comes with essential and non-essential. I don't know where you get that from. And who you are as the government to decide what's essential and non-essential. I mean, I don't know why I'm letting you run away from what you already said, which is that you think the Civil Rights Act 964 was unjust and it shouldn't have been passed.
Did I say that?
You said that we should allow private institutions to discriminate
Ignore it.
on the basis of race.
Privately owned
You advocated
institutions should
against
have the
what it
right to refuse service on any basis that they believe.
Ipso
That's not in-
facto, 1960 Civil Rights Act 964 it shouldn't be in place.
Right.
I also said that you shouldn't be able to discriminate on for things that I would consider utilities like housing, food, water.
Okay, so only part of the 1964 Civil Rights Act is okay.
Well, I mean, I think this
I'll-
is where this.
I'll
is the
actually
difference,
bite the
right, is
bullet
that
if you
individual-
want. I'll
Sorry.
say you can discriminate for any kind of service. even
least
if
you're
it's not
consistent.
essential.
Right,
Yeah.
but I that's consistent with ANCAP. So I mean, like, that
Yeah,
makes
but
sense.
like it's interesting that you like. It even says in the First Amendment that we respect the rights and liberties affords the religious institutions.
Free exercise. So I ask my first question again. What if you have a human sacrifice? That should be respected, correct?
Well, that
It should
goes
be
back to the
respected
fundamental
by right in the
violation of
face
the
of laws,
inalienable right.
right? So it'd be
You're
like,
violating someone's free exercise of religion. That should be boundless. You know why?
Well,
who
I
are
think
you?
you could make a less
No, no.
extreme argument for something
no,
like
it's not the same
circumcision.
thing.
Why
All the
not?
freedoms expressed within any of the governing documents are are bound by the same restriction that you cannot violate certain inalienable rights. That is the fundamental principle, right?
Absolutely.
So in that
Keep in
same
mind
vein,
that those were ignored functionally for a lot of people.
and
for
I
a very
agree, and I'm
long
not
period.
justifying any of those things.
No,
Right? In
just
fact, I
progress,
use that.
right?
In fact, I use that to argue against how the South would be able to justify their secession, because I think you cannot use a violation of an inalienable right to justify any position.
So forget that example. I don't want to pay Social Security tax because I'm against taxes as a religious matter. It's just not in my religious faith to pay taxes. Or let's say I'm a Christian, I don't believe in war, and my taxes are going to war. Therefore, I have claimed a religious exemption from taxes.
Right. So this then asks the question then that taxes, if they are oppressing any of the fundamental inalienable rights, if not, then the government has the right to maintain its same construct that, that taxes are essential in order to provide that basic service. And so therefore, I think taxes should be should be enforced, and there should not be a religious exemption for that.
But the religious person saying this is really important to me. It's really important that I not fund war. That is essential to my religious animus. And now we're saying the government gets to say that's not really important.
I know it really
The government already does that, right? The government already says that fundamentally
Okay.
these services must be provided in order to give this basic service, right? To fund the general welfare, to deliver these inalienable rights, to
The
protect these
same with
inalienable
racial
rights.
discrimination. The same with
Well,
discrimination.
see,
on the
that's
basis-
that's the question that I think that the founders may not have necessarily addressed directly, because I think this is the balance of individual rights versus, I guess, broader rights to be protected against by the function of government. Now, I'm not saying that obviously discrimination should be justified, right? But what I am saying is that I think in prior generations, the focus on individual rights as the check on this, the ability to discriminate, was something that was much more rigorously done, as opposed to today's society, where we choose to prioritize the structuring of the protection of those rights in a communal code and in violation of, well, excuse me, not violation, but on maybe encroaching upon the exercise of individual rights. And I think that's the difference there. And I'm not, not pointing one way or the other. I'm just saying that's.
I mean, I think there's a very good argument to make that says that we've discovered that just having one document that has very, very broad definitions of liberty and whatever doesn't actually functionally result in those things happening. I mean, I think it's pretty hard to reconcile the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, even with some of the things said in there, with the behaviors of the leaders at the time. There were hypocrisies and assumptions that were very wrong built into that, and we have to recognize that over time we've realized that some of these things need to be reformed and done in better ways. I mean, for example, like abolishment of slavery, that's a pretty major that flies in the face of all men created equal, et cetera, et cetera.
The founders left room to address that.
Well, but it resulted in a war. Like, it doesn't seem like they had the right tools to prevent it from exploding into one of the the most violent. I mean,
in a perfect society, we would solve all problems at the same time, right? I'm not saying that. Obviously, I'm just pointing out the practical reality, right?
We actually have to wrap this up. We're running out of time, so everybody's gonna get ending statements. And Tiberius, you're gonna be being replaced with Wake the Beast right after this ending statement. So we're gonna start with you first. For your ending statement.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, don't get me wrong. I would try to reach out to an olive branch to my more religiously minded friends because we live in a very complicated world. But it's also, I don't have a very favorable viewpoint on most of them. And I will totally admit that Sushi's criticism is right. I am totally biased and maybe, I don't know, bigoted towards my religious friends. So, yeah, I was really wanting to explore more like where Sushi draws the line there, but I couldn't dominate the conversation enough. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Next, I'm going to throw it over to last username.
Yeah. I mean, I try to be real consistent on this. I don't think it seemed to be turned into a discussion about discrimination. I don't think you need any sort of special protection laws against discrimination. I think people should be able to refuse service for whatever reason they want. And I don't think whether, you need a religious excuse for that. The only thing, the exception to that, which I think is important, is that I don't think you should I think you should have to make it clear in any sort of advertising, like a sign outside your place, what your policy is. I don't think you can say like anybody, come in, like we sell cakes, and then they have to come up to the counter before they find out that, oh, they don't sell cakes to your kind of people. I think you should have to be explicit in your advertising about what your policy is. Otherwise, it's just a kind of fraud, right? It's like false advertising. If you say you sell cakes, it means you sell cakes to everybody. If you don't sell cakes to everybody, you got to make that clear. I make that clear in my straight white male cake shop. It's right there on the sign. And frankly, I'm sick and tired of all these chicks and queers and brown people strolling into the place and making themselves at home. So I think just get rid of these anti-discrimination laws once and for all.
I'm sorry, I'm a little taken back. What was that about?
Straight white male cake shop. You were there the other day, Dylan.
What was that? Huh?
You ordered the blueberry cake. Oh, never mind. That didn't happen.
He was making it. Come on, he was making a joke.
I think I got it. Okay. ANCAP comedy is on the line comedy. Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to Pisco.
Yeah, I just want to address those comments from last username first. At first, I thought he was being consistent, but now he's being totally inconsistent. So now these businesses have to be explicit about what they're advertising. The government's allowed to regulate what a business is and is not allowed to advertise. And now you have a government that sort of has false advertising laws that are adjudicated by some body that's private. I don't know how this framework for false advertising fits in your anarcho-capitalistic society. More to the point, I think, more fundamentally, Sushi and others who've defended him have been unable to find a satisfying limiting principle for why we allow discrimination for criminal penalties for smoking peyote, for human sacrifices, for taxation, and not for racial laws and anti-discrimination frameworks that religious institutions commonly think that they're entitled to exceptions for. I think most telling in this conversation was Sushi's statement that he thinks the Civil Rights Act of 1964, at least as applied to businesses' right to refuse service, is unjust. I think that tells you all you need to know about the consistency of their positions and what are the moral outcomes likely to be if they were put in charge. I think these anti-discrimination frameworks are extremely valuable, are a compelling purpose, and since they are neutral and generally applicable laws that apply to consistently across the board, they should also apply to religious institutions, and we shouldn't respect an ecclesiastical right to hate. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to throw it over to the Corn Boy.
Corn Boy. I don't know. I'm seeing from mostly Sushi, a little bit of Red Gray, and then last username at the end here. I don't understand the type of society you necessarily want. It seems like I guess I don't see the point of politics or government if it's not to make sure that we have a functional and roughly equitable experience for everybody that lives in it. It seems like very chaotic to be like, well, you can go here, can't go there. Last year's name's literally advocating for whites only signs, which obviously was not super useful for, I mean, just from, I'm not even a pure capitalist, but I'm assuming, and well, obviously ANCAP is, I'm assuming Sushi is from a capitalist perspective, the free flow of capital here is not helped at all by limiting where capital may flow. It seems it just doesn't seem to be good under that system. It doesn't seem to be good from an ethical point of view. It doesn't seem to be good from just how our Constitution is set up. Like it just, I mean, it doesn't sound like America whatsoever. It sounds like sort of, here's my Mad Max community that exists where we can say yikesy shit and be on the edge of comedy, where we scare the lefties, and I guess we don't allow the gays or something. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a very useful worldview. It doesn't seem, it just doesn't seem functional at its like basis when you try to dig into it. It's just like, well, no, we could do this, and then someone asks a question and they clarify, and it turns out that you just disagree with yourself, and it seems to be a loop of hypocrisy.
Next is going to be RedGrayBlue.
So I think I really enjoyed the discussion. I really appreciated everyone's take on kind of evaluating how we would, I guess, essentially how we would balance this and how we would try to rectify this, right? Because I don't think that fundamentally there should be a lot of special exemptions. I mean, I don't think there should be any special exemptions. I do think that it is possibly a little bit more nuanced than what ActualJake is saying, because I don't think that it's a structure that is chaotic and that doesn't somehow exist in the world, because I think it really just kind of comes down to what is the balance of government's role and how do we prioritize and protect those rights. Now, I think right now in today's society, we're built on a climate that is specifically in trying to directly and explicitly protect those individual rights through legislation. And in the past, that's not something that has always been done. And I'm not saying that the past is like a great example of that, because I think, like Pisco said, I would not support getting rid of the Civil Rights Act. I think that's an important act. However, I do think it's important to ask the question of where do we explicitly define the protection of rights proactively, as opposed to maybe addressing them in a way that is overextending the reach of government involvement in the personal life of the individual. So I think the balance is quite challenging, and I recognize that that's an issue, but I think that it's a system that this system and the framework that we were given was designed to flex and change in order to address and fit the needs of society. So if the needs of society mandate that we need an explicit protection of those rights, then so be it. But I personally would still advocate for more individual autonomy in that structure.
Next is going to be Demon Mama.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that have come up, and I feel like we've gone to a lot of areas on this topic. But I just want to point out the fact that we have to build functional rules if we want to have an equitable and functioning society. Throughout history, throughout American history especially, we have all kinds of examples of times where discrimination was enshrined in law, and it completely barred people from any sort of sense of justice or equality whatsoever. We have things like such as slavery. We have things like redlining. We have things of just abject discrimination, like Irish need not apply. Those sort of things. These are all through our history. So the idea that these things don't happen when they're not like actually fought against or not explicitly denounced by our system is just simply not true, and it flies in the face of history. We have to build structures that allow people to have access to the things they need to survive, things like healthcare, things like food. We can't afford to just sort of throw things to the wind in the name of profit for these things. We have to assure equity. Otherwise, you end up with situations where, say, people could be completely boxed in by restaurants that they can't go to because it is it's because they're white only restaurants or they're straight only restaurants, and everybody and you just, for some reason, the banks just don't seem to give money to gay people, or they don't happen to give loans to black people. So you have to actually structure a society that will functionally prevent that type of discrimination, unless you are willing to admit that you just don't believe in equality. And so some of the things that have been said tonight, particularly by Sushi, just make me think that his belief isn't in equality, and he just says that he does, but doesn't functionally actually believe in that. The same way he said he supported the Civil Rights Amendment, but then argued directly in the face of it. And I just find that to be not a good argument.
This topic, if we're sort of looking at consistency and for extremes, I think one extreme is represented by last username in the we should be able to discriminate for any reason ever. And I think that's like a consistent position that you can have. I would have loved to talk more about the other extreme. So like if we're not allowed to discriminate based off of religion or race, why would we be allowed to discriminate based off of class or ability or wealth? Why should somebody who doesn't have enough money not have access to essential services? To all services, really. I think that's an interesting conversation. I think society as it exists right now is somewhere in the middle, and I would say arbitrarily so. And I'd be interested to hear like everybody's personal perspectives and distinctions of like all the different categories. But I guess unfortunately we didn't go too deep. But yeah.
You know what? We're gonna have deep voice Dylan for the rest of this. Does anybody mind?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
No way.
No, it's very exciting.
See, now that she entered the room, I'm putting on an act. I gotta be, manly.
Gotta be very alpha.
Exactly. I'm an alpha male, as the youth call it. We're gonna go on to the next topic, which is one apparently that is Suspect. I didn't know I was gone. Okay, Suspect. You get to finish off. I'm sorry about that.
All right. I'm not gonna say anything that worth value, so you can all turn your ears off. I'm just gonna be kind of a dickhead. All right, listen. It's a bunch of people who aren't religious, like hating on religion as per usual. Big fucking yawn. Right. Not only that, people openly here on this panel openly advocate for shit that would bankrupt our nation even further. Fucking, it's stupid. All right. I think everybody should have healthcare. Stupid fucking take. Healthcare is not an essential service that is given to everybody. It is a service provided to you by a third party. All right. And last I checked, I'm still the only person who's ever consistently sold health insurance for a long amount of time. I know about it a little bit more than the average fucking person. Deal with it. Get your bread up. If you can't fucking do it, you can't fucking do it. All right. Not only that, Jake, you have a stupid nose. I don't know, something.
Nice
Wow.
cope.
Fire.
That's an excellent cope.
Cope?
What's cope? What's an essential service if not healthcare?
We're going on to the.
But can we?
We
I just want to know
got-
one example.
This is a long-standing rule. We got
Closing
Alright.
statements.
Look,
closing
alright.
statements.
Okay.
Closing statements.
It is closing statements. Has everybody gone at this point? Okay.
Is it too late for me to go?
If you want to give your opinion, Wake, you can have a 1 minute period of time to give your opinion.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and step out on a limb here and say that religion is a social net good. And when you look at society today, it's really fragmented, isn't it? It's divided by sexism, genderism, ableism, racism. I mean, you name it. There's an ism for every single schism. So, what force of unity do you feel that human beings have at their disposal that could perhaps heal all of these rifts and help everyone to look past all of these arbitrary differences? Is it not religion? Can you think of a more cohesive glue that has held civilizations together, more so than that? The problem is that we don't believe in God anymore. This is a generation whose life has been reduced to materialism. And what I mean by that is the Evolan sense. There's nothing about our experience that goes outside of the material world without some great leap of faith or some knowledge of a hidden mystery. So what does that mean? It means that for the time being, because we're so fragmented and we really can't agree on a political system, let alone a religion, your religious freedom should extend to the point that mine does. You should be allowed to resist religious pressure to the same degree that someone is able to pursue it.
So the next topic is death with dignity. Should it be legal? I'm going to start with the top left-hand corner with Demon Mama. Whoa, am I now really loud?
Yeah, it's really bad.
Okay. Give me a second. How about now? How do I sound now?
You gave Red Gray so much shit earlier.
Okay.
Now it's happening.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Is it good? Is it good now? Is it good now?
Yeah.
It's a good catch, Jake. I like it.
Wonderful. It's
You're
top.
like,
And the next topic is
Okay, I get it. Okay, now let's keep it going. Demon Mama, go.
Yeah, I definitely believe that people should have the right to self-determine their sort of end-of-life decisions. Of course, I don't think that this should be something that's taken lightly. Obviously, we need to handle this with some level of integrity and weighing it. I think that generally, however, people are able to come to agreements with their doctors, with their personal personal caretakers, as to whether their quality of life has dropped to a point where they're no longer happy or they're no longer able to thrive. I think that it's really inhumane for us to insist that someone hold on to life in abject misery. And I think that if somebody comes to the conclusion that they no longer wish to suffer in that way, that they should be able to seek that sort of an option. Here, at least in the United States, end of life is a terrifying prospect, and it's currently incredibly limited. People often spend years in agony, in loneliness. We don't do a good job taking care of old and sick people here in the United States, and I think that that we should allow for these sorts of things to exist as an option for people. Certainly not the only option, of course, but certainly as an option. But it should always be from the perspective to the greatest degree of consent. I think that this becomes complicated when people don't have sort of advanced directives or anything like that. But we should encourage people to have those sort of things. We should encourage people to have been thinking about this and to keep track of their thoughts and share those with relevant caretakers. So yeah, I support people having the right to dignity, the right to choose when they've dealt with enough suffering, if they're like terminally ill, for example. And yeah, I would support that absolutely, for sure.
Next, I'm gonna throw it over to RedGrayBlue.
I'm for having the ability to choose how you would like to pass, and for an individual that is terminally ill, I believe that's the clarification that we're using in this context. I think that it's important for the individual to be able to choose their quality of life, to be able to have that individual autonomy when honestly extending their life actually may be a more costly, more painful, more disruptive, and more a stressful experience for those involved in the experience, including family. So I think that in a situation where, obviously individuals, you see this in day-to-day life where people take their own life. Obviously, I don't want to promote that. And I think that we need to be cognizant of the dangers that it poses, and that there could be misinformation, it could be miseducation, and we want to make sure that we address those topics when we're going forward with such a serious issue where individuals will make the decision to potentially take their own life. And I think it's important that we set some standards to that, so that we make sure that there is adequate protections given to the individual and adequate training and resources provided to someone who's going to make that decision. Now, obviously, I guess this kind of tails into some of the medical services provided, but it's a greater discussion. So I'll just stop my intro there.
Wonderful. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Wake the Beast.
Oh, thank you again for the time. And again, I'm always impressed by how many brilliant minds you can put together in one place, Dylan. And also, my chat says that your Slash cosplay was spot on tonight. So big ups to you, friend. I want to say this. This question is an example of our over-reliance and dependence on government. In reality, whether or not a person wants to continue living or they want to die is not something an act of legislation can change. If you absolutely want to terminate your life, there are a myriad number of ways you can do that with or without government permission. Now, the problem is that without some sort of restriction in place to keep this from being exercised flippantly, people are left to dictate their own logic. Now, if you ask a person, they'll say that they form their logic first, then they decide what they want to do. But in reality, it's the reverse. We first fixed our mind on what we want to do, and then we find the logic to justify that course of action. So what does that mean? It means that without some sort of barrier in place between people and ending their own life, you will inevitably have people who are abusing this function in the system. And for those individuals who do not have a moral system that teaches them to go beyond the arbitrary feelings they might be feeling, there should be something in place and there should be restrictions.
Wonderful. Next, I'm going to throw it over to ActualJake.
I thought that was interesting that we're talking about over-reliance on government, but still needing some sort of barrier to dictate whether or not it's reasonable for someone to take their own life. Strange, kind of weird take, but maybe it's maybe it'll be illuminated further. Yeah, I think bodily autonomy is incredibly important from every aspect of it, from abortion to gender confirmation. Not even just surgery, just like other stuff, the way that you present yourself, even. I think there's not really an argument to be made against bodily autonomy in any way that really makes any sense to dictate when someone ought to be able to end their life. And I do think, specifically in regards to the death with dignity conversation, which is a sort of, it's not, not to be crass, but it's not blowing your brains out in your living room. It's about being in a hospital, in a situation, in a setting where your family can come join you. It's not this gross thing. It's something where medical professionals know how to painlessly end your life in a way that will end your suffering. It has dignity, and it allows you to actually say goodbye to people. Like, just because you can grab a belt and do it in a closet door doesn't mean that's like the ideal way that most people would like to end their own suffering. So yeah, I think that government plays a role in this, because again, everything is politics, even if we don't want it to be. And there's a lot of places where if you do try to commit suicide and you fail, there are legal penalties for that, which is ridiculous, and the thing that we need to address. That said, of course, I don't advocate for people offing themselves for just flippant ideas. I think, again, a big focus on making sure that publicly funded mental health care is a thing, publicly funded medical care in general. I mean, a lot of reasons that people kill themselves has to do with financial distress, not just medical distress, and not just pain and suffering in that way, but the way that the capitalist system itself tends to prey on those of the lower class. And for those of you who are fellas here in this chat, men face a big issue with this, whether they're cis or otherwise, just based on societal expectations and all the stuff that goes into that. So I mean, it's a huge men's health issue as well, suicide. So, and this spans many countries. Japan is a huge example of this.
Next, I'm going to be throwing it over to SuspectSushi.
I think it should be between the person involved, their doctor, and if they have one, like a religious, like their religious figure within their community, or a mental health, like psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever. Like, also when it comes to somebody who is going through that amount of pain, if there isn't a legitimate amount of medication that can be provided to them to make their life as easy as possible while they go to their end. I mean, I have no issue with that personally. Like, religiously, obviously, like we're not a big fan of suicide. However, it's not my right to tell you how to dictate how you want to end your life, or allow for yourself to pass. So I usually kind of just have a hands-off approach in the thought process of I'm not gonna basically shit talk anybody who chooses that out for themselves. Also, I think we're talking specifically about medically assisted suicide, not suicide itself, right? Are we talking, if we're talking specifically within the framework of like terminal illnesses and things like that. It's a little bit different than like the mental health issue that goes within like like shooting yourself in the head or something like that. Also, I don't really think that we should try to bring capitalism in to muddy the waters as a reasoning as to why somebody would probably commit suicide. I think that's kind of weird, kind of yikesy. But that's basically it.
No problem. Next, we're throwing it over to Pisco.
Thanks so much, Dylan. I think the answer to whether patients should be allowed to end their lives via assisted suicide answer is yes, but yes with some government constraints. I don't know necessarily what those constraints would be or what the most effective ones are. I think there's a great deal of preventable harm that exists among people who we know will suffer a great deal. And as someone who believes in the most good for the most amount of people, I think ameliorating that harm is important. The most compelling arguments I hear, maybe not the most compelling, I see sort of two sets of arguments. One is that life is sacred and we can never end it for any reason. That argument, I'm glad that no one on this panel as of yet has ascribed to. I think it's obviously sort of not indicative of, when people say that, they often have positions that are inconsistent with that framework. But the other, I think, more compelling argument is that we're worried about some sort of parade of horribles with respect to conflicts of interest of insurance companies. Maybe they're pushing people to end their lives sooner. I'm not sure that is a problem. There are people who are concerned with pretextual murders, people who will, like, if you could just contract away assisted suicide, will that yield in a large number of otherwise preventable murders? I don't know that there's any empirical reason to suggest those kind of things are happening. And I think they can be, to the extent they are happening, largely prevented with proper administrative structure to make sure that any kind of decision is knowing, voluntary, and intelligent. The one thing that strikes me as maybe inconsistent for my own interest is I often argue that abortion is necessary and valid and should be allowed in this country. One of the arguments that's given is bodily autonomy. But if I'm in favor of this structure that puts at least some restrictions on bodily autonomy, then aren't I being inconsistent with respect to abortion? I think that's a good question. And I think the answer to that is we shouldn't value bodily autonomy innately. We should only care about bodily autonomy insofar as it affects the well-being of other people. So with that said, I think that the question becomes what kind of restrictions on assisted suicide, not whether or not we should have it in the first place. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to throw it over to last username.
Absolutely, you should have every right to end your life. It is your choice. You are free to die, to not live. And not only should this be your right, it is something that we really, really have to get used to talking about as we get older. More and more people are dying of dementia these days. Pretty sure. And this is not a way that you want to. You don't want to let that disease take you. It's just not. I cannot conceive of how someone would want to, go like live that disease to the end. I've watched a couple people die that way, and it's not good. And the reason it happened is because basically there is no way. There's just no sort of standard mechanism or socially acceptable way to discuss like the idea of, okay, when should I die? When should we give this up, and should I just end my life? And so it didn't get talked about, and so nothing happened, and that was really frustrating and tragic. So we have to, yes, not only give people that right, but also sort of figure out the way to make it socially acceptable and to proactively discuss while you still can discuss when you will end your life, when is your standard, when are you no longer living, and nobody should try to keep you alive.
Okay, and last but not least is Dario.
Yeah. So first off, I would just like to recognize that I think what Sushi said was really stupid. I definitely do think that a lot of people wish for suicide or other things because of financial conditions. I think that's like a great reason why a lot of people in society are suffering today, and more than they should have. So when that's being said, I guess as maybe the only one on the panel, I actually oppose medically assisted suicide as it is carried out in society today, in the countries that offer it to a great extent. And there's a variety of reasons, but they're mostly pragmatic and one end or another. So I think the first issue is an issue of informed consent. I don't believe that with the technology and the medical procedures that we have available today, that it is possible to give informed consent to engage in medically assisted suicide yourself. And this is also borne out in some of the data and studies that is done around people who actively seek this. The vast majority of them, like 90+%, suffer from multiple like heavy psychiatric disorders, which I mean makes sense because oftentimes those conditions are because of whatever conditions you currently have, right? That led you to seek it in the first place. And as a society, we have generally decided for other reasons, like if you're under heavy distress, like mentally, that you get some of your autonomy taken away from you. Furthermore, I think generally like these things are done in collaboration with doctors, and which the doctors generally do a bunch of assessments. A lot of them are based around sort of an aspect of pain. And we don't really have any objective ways to measure these, right? They're very much subjective based on the doctor's assessments. And when mistakes happen in these areas, they can't really be taken back when we talk about like death. And the last part is another practical one is that I think generally the way that medical science works is that it's constantly evolving and it's evolving very fast, like especially in recent times. And things that are currently deemed to be chronic or things that currently cause you a lot of pain to the point where you would want to seek these issues, they might get a cure or they might get like some way to alleviate that within like the next year or so through like insane medical breakthroughs that are constantly happening everywhere in the world. And no single doctor or institution has like an index of like all of these things that could possibly like cure whatever it is you're ailing currently. Yeah, and for pragmatic reasons, I think there's definitely edge cases at both edges in terms of like where I would say it's reasonable to like seek these things. Hopefully, we'll get into the specifics. And obviously, I recognize like if somebody actually wants to like kill themselves or engage in suicide, I mean, it's going to be really hard to stop them. So I'm only talking about the medically assisted suicide track. Yeah.
Okay, next I'm going to be throwing it over. Well, actually, no, that's everybody. So it is a open field. You may
Quick
engage
Oh wait, I'm sorry. No, I was trying to jump in first. Go ahead.
freely. Go.
Yo, Dario, that fucking annoys me that you said I had a stupid take, and then I was literally waiting for open forum to talk about informed consent. I'm so fucking annoyed. Basically, I was trying to say that like if people are in a coma, they can't really truly give the consent. You know, also things like if they're going through exceptional amounts of pain, that can impair judgment, which also could alter like their potential decision making skills and things of that nature. I was just really annoyed by that. That annoyed the ever living fuck out of me.
That wasn't the dumb take, though. The dumb take was that you thought capitalism doesn't play.
No. I'm saying listen to what I said. I was annoyed that he said something was dumb, and then brought up the point that I wanted to bring up in the open panel.
Maybe you should have brought it up, dude.
Yeah, because I wanted to bring up in the open panel.
But you brought up a dumb thing that was dumb.
Listen, dude. Like when I grew up in abject poverty, I didn't think, you know what? Here's the best fucking out. Boom, just ending it all. I understand there's differences for everyone, and but like the way that you formulated I think the way you formulated it made it more sound that like because of capitalism, when somebody's in the situation of medically assisted suicide, that's the reason why they take the out. That's what I was talking about.
Let me not take this detour.
No,
I said that was my interpretation of what he said, Pisco.
Well, capitalism does capitalism does directly, like according to people that commit suicide or attempt suicide, financial distress under capitalism specifically is like one of the major issues, specifically in regards to medical debt, where they go like, well, I have cancer. They're not necessarily in abject pain. They're not necessarily suffering, but like my family is going to be bankrupt. My family is going to have a less quality of life, basically just because I had the misfortune to get sick with a thing that is maybe I'm genetically predisposed of no fault of my own. Now my family has to suffer, and then they say, well, if I do this and I happen to get in a car accident or something, because again, the insurance companies, as you well know, seller of insurance guy, protect against suicide and stuff like that, so they don't have to pay for these families with suffering people. Like this is a very common issue that that you protect against. So I don't know why you would deny it.
At the very least,
right, and it's
part of the issue, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the one like major thing, but it's always a factor. Like probably.
I think it's gravity.
Capitalistic society is a large contributing factor, at least financially, when it comes to suicide. So like, socialist and communist society has a zero fucking suicide. Like, is that my interpretation? So suicide is a societal thing. Why would you even blame it on capitalism then?
Hold on, wait, because capitalism is a societal thing.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that bringing
wait.
People,
you just said something again that's
Okay.
entirely undefensible. You said capitalism exists, and so there's suicide. It wouldn't exist at all in socialist societies. No, just because it would exist in another system doesn't mean the system you currently have is better for suicide statistics.
Would there still be medically assisted suicide?
Yes,
on
and
the
it would
basis
be a
of,
lower
like, financials.
Yes. And again, based on studies that not just involved in suicide, but also abortion studies, which is a great example of bodily autonomy. In both situations, when you have free access to either, the numbers decrease because they're taking a proactive approach to suicide. They're talking to people. Why do you want to commit suicide? Why would we're going to take you from a situation where you have no mental health care into a situation where you have to go.
We already have those institutions.
We don't already have.
Can I?
Hotline?
Do you mind if I ask a question on topic?
A hotline?
Suicide hotlines like
a suicide hotline is not mental health care.
Wait, give me a second.
No, but you get you in contact with those people.
Geek, do it. Okay, Dario. You wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, so I guess nobody was asking me questions. So I guess I'll ask. I'll ask Jake a question first.
Yeah.
So you said that bodily autonomy is extremely important, right? It should be very well respected and you made it very clear, right? And like my thought was, well, do you think that's like an alpha omega thing, like that is a supreme thing? So like, should we let children have complete autonomy over their bodies? Like, should we intervene when people have heavy mental?
What is your certain extent? Could you clarify that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for instance, I don't think that you should be able to circumcise a child. Like they have bodily autonomy. They
better for them.
It's
no.
It's not medically better.
Sure. So this is like the reverse, I guess. So you shouldn't take their autonomy away. So I guess what I'm more asking is like, should
about
a child
informed consent, roughly?
Should I let's say a 10-year-old, should they be able to? Should they be able to do whatever they want with their body?
You should. I'm assuming you said, should we advocate for 10-year-olds who are very depressed and being like, hey, you can just kill yourself?
Well, yeah, depressed or like in other things.
So this, of course,
Yeah,
and sadly, this is of course a thing that happens, especially in the LGBT community for children.
Yeah.
Especially in regards to when they start hitting puberty, where shit just gets weird for everybody. Suicidal kids are not a great problem that we have, but we do have that problem. And a lot of it, there's tons of factors that go into every single person's idea of I want to end my life. It could be a myriad. It doesn't really matter, and that's why I think mental health care is ideal, and that's the point. Like, when I advocate for something like death with dignity, it's always under the idea that those people are going through at least mental health care to determine the correct outcome for them. If a 13-year-old is very, very sad and has like clinical depression, and maybe, I don't know, they get bullied at school every day for being a little bit different, or their parents are divorced and it's just really hard on them, or whatever's going on. Obviously, I don't want to say, yeah, go ahead, Timmy, and let's take you to the hospital right now. You're sad today. Obviously, I think that should be a long-term effect, but I mean, like, at a certain point, when do we give someone autonomy? And I think the answer tends to be 18 years old. Although, I mean, you could disagree with that, and I think 21 seems a little bit more reasonable. That said, I tend to agree. So I'm not saying that every situation has to be like, okay, we just let children jump off cliffs together. But that said, sometimes there's situations where kids are in hospice And I don't think that kid needs to suffer. I don't think that that needs to be the case. And so it would be a very case by case basis. But that's why you have mental health professionals, you have medical professionals, you have whatever's applicable to the situation, social workers, whatever, to determine like, is this situation, is it more cruel, ethically speaking, for this person to exist in the way that they exist, knowing that improvement is unlikely. Then maybe, I don't know.
Well, sure. So I guess my issue again is with sort of okay. So I think the ramifications of death are so severe that we better be damn sure, right? So I won't accept something like, we're pretty sure. I mean, you're probably not going to recover, like these kinds of things. Like these are things that should be proven without like at a demonstrable rate.
It's very similar to the death penalty.
Sure. Well, yeah, and I don't support the death penalty, right? So
Can I ask you a question about that, Dario?
And Demon Mama too is about to.
Sure. I guess can I just finish what I wanted to say to Jake?
Yeah. I just wanted to get in after Dario because I have a question. I would sort of push back for Dario.
Sure. Yeah. I assume everybody's gonna have them. So. So just for Jake, so when I think of the way that, to my understanding at least, like these things work, is that you have sort of over time, like over several months or even like years, you have conversations with like multiple medical professionals, and they sort of do a lot of assessments of you. And this is why there's actually like a bunch of studies on this of like people who are actively seeking this, because they're actively receiving like constant medical care and attention. And what does seem to be the case is that like over 90% of them, at least in the study in Belgium, like have multiple like mental disorders, like not just one, but they have like multiple. Yeah, obviously, right?
And I think those same studies show that they end up choosing not to end their lives.
Some of them, yeah, like a lot of them, right? And only, I believe it was like only like 30% of the people who actually like go through the process actually end up doing it, right? So like,
and that's ideal. You're saving 70% of people.
Sure. So and I like that part of the process is definitely good, but I feel like that part of the process could also be given through like just giving them adequate mental health care, right? Because that's basically what it is, right?
Well, it's part of the point. Like if you destigmatize the whole thing, and I'll let Demon Mama go right after this. If you destigmatize the entire process of seeking to end your life, you can get people exposed to the proper mental health care channels that would likely prevent them from doing so, right? Like that's kind of the idea, is we take a proactive approach. It's the same idea you have with like a heroin hotel, for instance. You approach drug addiction with, sure, you can do the drug under supervision of medical care, and it's with an effort to wean you off of this addiction and get you the health care that's provided, even though, there is a stigma about being a drug addict, right? It's the same thing. It's a destigmatization with a proactive approach. However, sometimes someone's going to overdose, and sometimes someone's going to just choose death still. Yeah. And I think as long as we're okay with the situation where we go like, okay, it's informed consent. We went through all the channels that we can. I don't have an ethical issue with someone choosing that.
Yeah. So one of the things I really wanted to address in this panel is that there, like, it's something I've been seeing coming up in a couple of different arguments, which is mental health is a material thing. Like it's not just imaginary. Like feelings are material. There is a lot of truth to that, and how someone feels about their life may be inspired by something impulsive, but it might also not be. For example, existing mental health, and I have a lot of familiarity with mental health, both personal and whatever and beyond in my family, as well as with some family members who suffered from dementia and unfortunately died from that condition. The thing is that like while there are some people who might be motivated to sort of ask for a death with dignity or a physician-assisted suicide from some sort of impulse, I don't think that you're going to find that that's the case much of the time. Like even in the studies that you're talking about, when people are saying that they have multiple mental health diagnoses, well, mental health diagnoses can be caused by all kinds of things. They don't just exist in ether. For example, if you're incapable of moving or standing on your own or going to the bathroom on your own, that might be the cause of your depression. It can that sort of suffering can literally lead to depression and anxiety. Also, just as a small pushback to what you were saying, like when you say multiple mental health conditions, again, keep in mind that many mental health conditions are diagnosed in tandem. Depression is almost always diagnosed with anxiety. So I don't think that necessarily the number indicates their actual mental state. And also,
yeah, sure.
again, yeah, I just, and so, my goal is that in looking at this issue, I always want to maximize the benefits of things. So for example, I want to maximize people's ability to determine what they do and don't have to deal with. If they're suffering, I want them to be able to have the ability to alleviate that suffering. There's a number of ways of that, whether it's, through, in a case like this where it's terminal, they decide that I can't do this anymore. My quality of life is so bad. I don't want to wake up every day and suffer. I think they should have that right. Obviously, I do think that should be sort of abstracted through having other people that check and can help and offer other solutions first, because I do agree that it's final. But I also think that we can sort of acknowledge that just because we don't know sort of everything about death, or that death is a heavy and final issue, that we don't want to remove them and force people to live lives that are abject agony, or even traumatic for themselves and their family members. These are things that can be really bad, and I think people should have a right to be able to make those decisions. And also, I've been waiting for a while. I know we're a little bit far away from this, but I also just wanted to say that the idea that capitalism doesn't play into this conversation is just really silly to me. I mean, for example, it even plays into the amount of care that people are able to get. For example, here in the United States, there are all kinds of experimental procedures that if you have money, you can pay. You can legally pay to have them done, but they aren't covered by any insurance. So poor people, or people who only have insurance and are relying on their insurance, will not have access to the same things or the same types of decisions of what to do. So for example, I mean, I think that even adds into the calculus that Dario was talking about, where if somebody is on insurance and they can't pursue experimental options, that day may never come. They might not be valid for any sort of new invention or new procedure that comes out. And then also, of course, there is the undeniable fact that people do. It is a well-documented phenomena that people who contract a terminal condition or a very lengthwise condition, sometimes ones that aren't even terminal, like cancer, do often contemplate suicide. So that doesn't necessarily have to do immediately with the idea of euthanasia, but the idea that we have a system by which finances determines your healthcare, determines your actual the outcome of your life, and the idea that you can divorce that from capitalism is silly on its face. Yeah. So I just wanted to touch on those sort of.
I want to get other people in here though.
Dario, I had a question for you. I heard you.
I'll write all of them down.
Give me a second though. I want to just give some people some chances to speak, because I don't think they really had a lot. Wake the Beast, I haven't really heard much from you. Would you like to comment on anything that's been said?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. I want to push back on this idea that we live in a capitalist government in America. This is not a capitalist society. In a true capitalist society, there would be no such thing as being too big to fail. You understand? In a true capitalist America, America will look very different, because all of the banks and all of the airlines and the car manufacturers that couldn't cut the mustard would have collapsed years ago, and something bigger and better would have replaced them by now. So what do we have? We have crony capitalism, where corporate executives have the phone numbers to your president and key members of Congress, where they can secure large, enormous amounts of cash bailouts for themselves to perpetuate their tyranny on you. I also want to say big ups to my man Last Username for reminding us that we do not get our right to be alive or to die from the government. According to the American tradition, you have unalienable rights that you get from your creator, among them being the right to be alive. The question here is, to what extent should the government be allowed to infringe on your right to remain alive, or to execute your life based on your agreement that you have with your creator? I also want to take a moment to respond to something that ActualJake said. I think you asked for clarification earlier about a point that I made about how we have a mutual dependence that people have on government, while at the same time I'm advocating for people to make up their own mind. C.S. Lewis was a Christian, but he said this. He said, whether you are a Christian, a Muslim, or whatever, every man needs a way to say yes to certain things inside of his heart and no to other things in his heart. There is no man who can live by virtue of doing what pleases him in the moment. Now, for people who have a religion, this is the function it serves. But for people who do not have a religion, what do they typically adhere to? They use the law of the land to govern what's right, what's wrong, what's ethical, and what's unethical. So I suppose you could say that the latent function of a government is to provide a system of ethics for people in society who have yet to achieve a spiritual one on their own. But in general, over-reliance on the government is a bad thing.
A couple of things I just wanted to push back on there, Wake the Beast. One, the idea that we don't live in a capitalist system is again just not true.
He said crony capitalist, to be clear.
Yes.
Can we get off this derail? Why are we talking about capitalism?
I think it's important. I think if things
I
come
would tend to say this is what I'm going to say about this. We're going to talk about this for a little bit, and then we're going to get back to the topic, and then we're going to end it because we're running out of time on this one.
I want to answer what Demon Mama said.
Okay.
But Demon Mama was just talking.
I was talking about capitalism. Okay.
I'll let her finish quick. I'll give her 30 seconds to finish it, and then we'll get off of it.
Whether you want to call it crony capitalism or not, I mean, that's more of a matter of flavor of capitalism. Critics of capitalism in all of its forms have pointed out that capitalism as a system, its internal structures tend towards what you would call crony capitalism by default, because of stuff like, for example, regulatory capture, people gaining an increasing amount of wealth, which allows them an undue amount of political power. So I just don't think that saying we don't live in a capitalist system, I think that's very silly. But also, I think it plays into, this sort of plays into how we look at this topic as well, which is that we have a system right now where these sorts of rights are afforded.
You've gone over 30. You've gone over 30. You hit like 50.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Okay. I just want to get us back on the topic. Pisco, I know you wanted to respond for a little bit. I also saw Jake had his hand up earlier. Yeah. So I'm going to throw it to Pisco, then Jake.
I had a question for Dario. In his introductory statements, he said there can be no sort of consent. There can be no informed consent when someone chooses to take their life. Do you still ascribe to that belief that you said in your opening statement?
Well, yeah, but that's more like an ethical, I guess.
Okay. So then I give you, I don't mean to be flippant about this, but we're in the anniversary of 9/11. As you know, during that day, many people chose to take their lives on their own terms rather than succumb to the flames and asphyxiation and eventual collapse of the towers. Would you characterize their decision as done without informed consent or irrational?
Well, sure. So what you're basically asking me is, would they know in that moment that they would die, like, without a doubt? And I would say, well, I mean, if they're if you're like 1 second from dying and you decide to kill yourself like before the 1 second, then I would say there's like a reasonability there. But like if it's collapsing, I mean, you don't know if there's gonna be like some rescue operation or somebody gonna come in.
Why'd you grant it to me then? You just said if it's literally only 1 second away, if it's imminent, if it's happening.
Because I think there's like a reason. I mean, it depends on if you're asking me like a pragmatic or like if you're pragmatic or like an ethical question, right? So for the pragmatic one, I would say pragmatically, we can probably make some determinations where it doesn't really make sense to talk about them. Ethically, I mean, I can just say, yeah. I would just say, yeah, I don't think they can.
So there's no situation that you can envision in which someone has rationally made the choice to take their life.
Well, no, I don't think so, because I assign a negative value to death, like not a neutral one. Like I think death is the ultimate negative thing that a human can experience, right? So like losing 1 second of life is 1 second you'll never get back.
So what about
you? I don't understand. Why do you assume that other people have that value as well?
I don't. But he is asking me my ethics and morals, right?
We were talking about informed. You said that people can't consent to taking their own life.
Yeah.
Doesn't that mean you don't think you're questioning their values, not yours?
Yeah, you're questioning their ability.
Yeah, I mean, generally in society, we try to structure society based off our values and beliefs, right? I mean,
well, you don't have to. I mean, if someone says they value their own death and want to die, there's no reason. I don't see why you have to question that per se.
I mean,
You tell them, no, you're wrong. You
Well,
want to live. and
Sure.
you
I
just
mean, sure.
let them know.
Okay. Well, sure. I mean, I can just ask you a bunch of questions, right? So, let's say a child of 5 years old says they don't value their life, they want to die. Should you just let them kill themselves?
Probably not.
I'm giving you
Probably
the.
Well, why not? Why not? Why
I'm
don't
giving
you
you
value their
argument
autonomy?
for your
5-year-olds are dumb.
Well, yeah, and I would say it's dumb to want to die. Yeah.
That's a hard question for my.
No, I think when you get older, you get less dumb, and eventually you probably should be trusted to make that decision.
But I mean, you answer the question then, Dario. Do you think there's no case in which the
I said yes. Yeah, I said yes. Yeah.
why deny, you know, if it's really obvious that you have stage 4 some cancer that's totally incurable and your odds are as practically certain as the odds of the people in
Because
those
there's a difference between a moral and a pragmatic approach to things, right? I can oppose euthanasia from a pragmatic sense, and like maybe we can get some agreement, or we can like take the moral question and we can just all list our moral systems and prod the moral
forms of
aspect of it.
pragmatism. I can say we can have a very good system where we are entirely sure that we have a doctor there, we have
Yeah.
other people there to make sure that it's
Yeah.
knowing, voluntary. What would be wrong with that?
Yeah, so like in a perfect world, let's say in a future scenario where you could see that this person has literally nothing, like they're gonna die within the next 10 minutes, and you can without like with let's say 99.9% certainty say that that's gonna happen through like machines or whatever that can even read the future or whatever, then I'd say sure, yeah, then you have
That you would
all
require
the information.
confidence.
What if it's
level.
going to take a year for them to die, and it's going to be miserable, and they literally can't do anything
Yeah.
but suffer
Yeah.
for that?
Where does
next year?
imminence play into your calculation?
Yeah. What if it takes a year for them to die and they're going to be miserable for that year, but at the 9th month of that year a cure comes out, but not only that, you can also guarantee this person can actually live forever in like their best life possible.
So what do you think is more likely
That could happen with the 10-minute thing too. Cure could come in after 9
Yeah,
minutes.
sure. Yeah, sure.
I want to ask Dario. Can I ask you a question? So
Yeah, go ahead.
what if there is somebody, right, who has a certain form of cancer? Well, I'm asking a hypothetical before we wrap it up with final
Sure.
statements. And let's say,
There
for
you go.
example, I have cancer, right? And it isn't brain degenerative. They make me lose my noggin. Like, I have my sensibilities about me. And I'm like, wow, this sucks. And the doctor says, Dylan, there is a 5% chance that there's a cure that comes out. This cancer, I mean, cancer's been around for a while. This is a very specific type of cancer. It's a pretty rare disease. Most likely you got a year left of suffering. And I'm like, damn, that sucks. I understand my odds for a cure. I understand that. And I still, even with those odds, I want to end my life. What is the problem with that? What's the
I
problem?
feel like
there?
I've already answered that, I guess. Like from Pisco, that was like the same question.
Okay, so answer it again.
Sure. So I think that if you first off, the doctor, I don't think the doctor is able to correctively determine like the odds of like your survival, because I don't think that is possible from like the way that these things generally work. Like, so with euthanasia, you generally have like maybe 1 or 2 doctors to sort of oversee these things. And I don't think they have access to the knowledge of like what your percentage chance of survival is, or like a percentage chance of like a cure coming, right?
They
Who sets this
do.
5%?
They definitely do. I mean, we have
They
statistics.
they can say you have a 5% chance of like a cure coming out in the next year. They can do that without a doubt.
Cure coming in? No, but they can look at your condition.
That was the question.
You know,
Yeah, with the current knowledge that they have, but we're talking about killing somebody, right? Or like somebody dying. So I think when that is the barrier, you should be
Well, the problem with that is
sure.
like we don't know okay, so they could cure death tomorrow. So does that mean we should like everyone was required to be cryogenically frozen in case we cure? Like we don't want to bury them because we might be able to revive
I mean, if that
them.
was possible, I'm
It is
I'm
possible.
radically.
It might be invented tomorrow, right? Like we don't know.
If we could cryogenically freeze everybody who was about to
can.
die,
We are some people already do it.
Yeah, Walt Disney.
but
did
like
it.
You got
on
the
a
money.
societal level. Yeah, on a societal level, if we could structure that, I would be for
Then
that.
okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, like
I thought you were like a pragmatist. I thought you
I mean,
cared
I
about
can sort of
Wait,
understand
I
where Dario's coming from on this. Like I can understand to a certain degree, the sort of moral position that death is like the supreme bad because it ends a conscious life, and Dario clearly advocates for trying to preserve human life in the ways that we can. If
Yeah.
and
Well,
if it was
why?
possible,
It's inconsistent. It's inconsistent, Demo, respectfully, because
I know I'm getting to that, which is the thing that I want to address on this is just that like informed consent doesn't necessarily mean 100% accuracy. Like for example, I mean, there are all kinds of medications that are given out based on informed consent because there's risks involved with like many common medications, for example, can cause strokes or blood clots. So informed consent means you're aware of the risks and you're able to then make your own decision. And so in that regard, in this particular circumstance, it does kind of sound like you're hoping for the state to sort of impose the moral imperative that says, okay, well, likewise, death is important and no one can make an informed decision about death. But I don't know that, like, again, when you're talking about various different people have all kinds of different ways that they measure the weight of death, and people have all kinds of different ways in which they cope with death. So yeah,
I don't even accept that being alive is the ultimate value. Like I would rather
some people
if I could be.
And some people think it's okay to die because when they die, they'll go to heaven. So they might be more likely. And I'm not.
Well, but they're wrong. For that. But it's not wrong that dying sooner in some cases you might be better remembered if you die earlier than if you.
Who cares?
We
live longer, but die.
This is gone. Okay.
Who cares?
Look, I'm talking. Dario. Everybody knows the rules, right? Everybody knows the rules. Hey. Okay, if you don't follow the rules in here, then you won't even need to answer this question, okay? Look, let's go to the next one. Everybody's going to get a 1-minute finishing statement, and then we're going to go into the next topic. Okay, I'm going to start with Demon Mama in the left-hand corner.
I ultimately believe that with reasonable accommodation, people should be able to determine their own fate. There are a lot of things that are very difficult to measure. People have spiritual beliefs, people have material beliefs, whatever. They have all kinds of things that they hold close in how you measure death. Death is one of the toughest questions ever faced by humanity. But I do believe that when it comes down to the individual who has to decide whether they're going to suffer perhaps unbearably and perhaps suffer to a degree that they might lose their mental state, I believe that we should, err on the side of giving them the autonomy and the agency to make a decision. Now, does that mean that I think that you should just, like rush people through that process? Absolutely not. I think it should be a very deliberated process where you do your absolute best to ensure someone is informed to the greatest degree as possible. The other reason for this is that I think that if you don't provide these sort of outs, people will try to do more dirtier methods. And those can be horrific, not only for the families, for the surviving people, but also for the individual. A failed attempt at like sort of backyard suicide can even make their life even worse. And also there are some people who are immobile, who cannot actually, or not physically capable of ending their own life, and they might be agonizing in such a degree that we should allow the opportunity for them to make an informed decision. Of course, there has to be measures for that, and ideally this would be in a system where mental health is easily accessible and and completely available to everyone. But nonetheless, I do think that people have the right, or we should err at least on the side of giving people the right to determine their own future. Okay. I don't really believe in binding people to.
Next, we're gonna go to RedGrayBlue.
I think it's interesting the positions that everyone has taken in this topic, specifically around kind of enhancing of individuals' rights to choose.
Technical issues. Your screen is frozen and you're kind of hard to hear. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go through the rest of the list and come back to you at the end, and hopefully that have resolved itself. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Awesome. I'm gonna throw it over to Wake the Beast.
Yes, thank you. If I can speak to the law professor that exists inside of all of us, that part of us that wants to do everything correctly according to legal statutes, I can say this. The law really has no place in deciding on whether or not you are able to keep this inalienable gift that's been given to you by your creator. And if in fact you find yourself bereft of the belief of a creator or divine source, then you are most to be pitied, as you are very lost. But if I could speak now to the heart of the man who might be suffering, even if you are in pain, even if you feel as if life is hopeless, there is value for you. In reality, death is an easy decision. It only happens once. The people who are going to be most traumatically impacted are going to be your loved ones that you leave behind, who have to make use of the fact that you're no longer there. So even if you cannot find meaning in your life, if you are alive and your breath still beats and your heart does, we can find meaning and purpose for you in this life, regardless of your limitations.
Okay, next we're gonna throw it around to ActualJake.
That was dumb. Dario, you want to go?
Yeah.
Or whoever's next. Okay.
Okay, okay.
That was just goddamn stupid.
Okay, next I'm gonna throw it over
Holy
to Sushi.
Okay. Well,
Okay. First and foremost, ActualJake, you're a piece of shit and you have a face like a skirtle sack. Anyway, if you care about saving people's lives and reducing suicide, you will advocate for a
Why are you
sugar
so
tax. All right?
mad?
Reducing sugar consumption and making people more healthy will lead to less mental health problems, more disciplined people, a more resilient people, and more capable people way less likely to kill themselves. So before we implement any policy enabling individuals to end their lives with the government, we should first implement a sugar tax and create healthy programs to destroy and own obesity. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Okay, I gotta remove Endernax from chat. Don't know how he got in here. Next I'm gonna throw it over to Piscos.
Yeah, I just wanted to take head on Dario's notion that consciousness is this ultimate good. That's what I interpreted his position to be, that death is a particularly bad thing because consciousness is so valuable. If this were really true, and I want to sort of preface this by saying that I'm pro-choice, pro-abortion, you should be against abortion because you should be in favor of maximizing the number of conscious creatures that exist in society. I don't know why that preference is only for humans. I'm sure that's just as arbitrary. And I don't know why he wouldn't be in favor of ending abortion if he really were interested in the maximalist approach to consciousness. Since we're, I don't think, interested in that position, and I'm sure when push to shove you back away from that, I think the question becomes when we can become reasonably sure that the consequences of assisted suicide won't outweigh the benefits. And there are tons of benefits. If you ask anybody their preferences for life, you should take those into consideration and not put your own arbitrary standards of what qualifies as good or bad. Thank you.
Next, I'm gonna throw it over to last username.
Yeah, so being alive is overrated. It's definitely very useful in the course of accomplishing your goals, but being alive is not the the ultimate value in itself, as Dario thinks, and that's actually pretty obvious when you think about it. We risk our lives every day when we leave our house. We risk our lives in order to accomplish other things that we value. We sacrifice our lives in some rare situations, but there's definitely situations in which there are things that we value so much that we literally decide to end our life to accomplish those things. And there are times when we just end our life because there's no particular reason to keep living it. It's really not hard to think of times like that. It's not very pleasant, but it's not hard. So this, the idea that life is more valuable than everything else, or takes primacy over it, it's just not true. We don't act that way, and I think you have to let go of that idea in order to understand what really gives meaning to our lives. Our lives are not just being alive, and so we're going to have to come to terms with that, and we're going to have to let people talk about when the situations when they can end their lives, because they definitely exist. They exist for all of us. There's a situation in which every one of you would decide to end your life. Yeah.
Next, we're gonna throw it over to Dario.
Whew, there was a lot of things there. So it's very easy to get lost in this conversation because I feel like it's very nuanced, and I think it very much assumes like each person's like moral and ethical positions in terms of like the pragmatic arguments for being against the concept of like medically assisted suicide as it exists today. I don't think those necessarily have to presuppose an ethical or moral question. That's why I led with that, and I feel like there are like, I guess, data driven or like arguments that like most people would agree with that go against the systems that currently exist. In terms of the ethical one, that's more of like an ethical question of like, do you think suicide is good in general, or do you think people should commit suicide, right? And to that, I mean, I would say that, and to answer what Pisco said, I guess to some degree, is that I assign a negative value to death, right? And like to the death of an individual. But as a utilitarian, we generally weigh the overall utility or health of society, not just one individual, right? So like if the death of one individual is outweighed, or like I guess the utility in the death of one individual saves like the rest of the world, then sure. I mean, there's like some arguments to be had there depending on like what your morals are. In terms of like the pro-choice or pro-life, I mean, sure. I mean, I'll definitely bite the bullet. I think there's different arguments for being pro-choice or pro-life in terms of the ethical framework that I put forth. I don't necessarily think it's that valuable for this conversation, but I would say I'm generally pro-choice in the society that exists today, because I think the way that women generally are forced to bear and care for children is unethical from like most standards. But in a better society where you could basically birth a child and instantly give it to a community or society that would take care of it to no cost to the parent or the child and no change in outcomes, I would be pro-life. I would say, yeah, like bear the child, and then as soon as you have born the child, you give it to society, and the society takes care of the child.
Okay, next we're going to throw it over to RedGrayBlue, who is no longer present. So we're not throwing it over to RedGrayBlue. We're going on to the next topic. The next topic is should funding for local police departments be redirected? I'll repeat it one more time for the people in the back. Should funding for local police departments be redirected? I'm going to start in the top left-hand corner, which is Demon Mama.
Yes. I think that that redirecting funding from the police to more efficacious institutions and structures is a very good thing for us to strive for. Obviously, I think this is a very challenging legislative goal, but I think it's something that we should do. Many of our problems that we see, many of the problems with poverty and crime in our society, and the amount that those two things are tied together, are the product are not the product of not having enough police or not having well-armed enough police, but rather that there are massive gaps in the well-being of our society that no amount of police will ever solve. And I think right now our police are heavily overfunded. They are bloated in nearly every area of the nation. They do the jobs of a number of other services that would be way better equipped. Prime example of this was in Utah just a couple of days ago. A mental health call was put out to emergency services. An autistic child was having a crisis, and the police were dispatched to that. The police ended up shooting the child, and that child ended up in the hospital. I don't know their current state because I literally haven't checked the story today.
They currently are still alive, I believe.
Okay, that's good. That is very good news. But nonetheless, what we have right now is an over-reliance on police, a conflation of the idea that police equals safety and that more police equals less crime, when in fact it often seems to be the other way. So in my opinion, we need to redirect funding from the police, from our grossly militarized police system, and into things like public health, social safety nets, education, things like childcare that are even more important as our economy is blasting into the tank. So these things are what we need to do to address problems in our society. So absolutely, we should start redirecting funds from the police.
Okay, I'm gonna mix it up a little bit, and I'm gonna have Sushi go next.
Unmuted. All right, cool. All right, first and foremost, I don't think that the policing needs to have redirected funds. If anything, we need to increase the amount of funding that goes towards policing. I always love when people say that we police respond to things that they're not necessarily capable or trained for, and yet I gotta tell you, all these like stabbings, attempted rapes, shootings and stuff like that. We really do need social workers to go out there and respond, because those are the best people for it. Not only that, but it seems pretty apparent that even people in minority communities actually want more policing of their areas to make them safer. Like the narrative that this is actually the antithesis to this point is actually kind of bullshit. Basically, you only see BLM Marxists who really want these things. So, and also I noticed that when people constantly talk about like privilege, or white privilege or things like this, like they're actually like the most loud voices when it comes to defunding the police or reallocating funds away from the police, when disproportionately the most policed areas that has the most rampant amounts of crimes are minority areas. So police officers are quite literally making it safer for these people to be there. And when people like to cite instances in which like a certain police officer may go well beyond his bounds and harm another or unlawfully shoot somebody or things of this nature, we have to remember that it's considerably less than 1% of all instances of police interactions when it comes on a yearly basis. It's not an epidemic. If they say that, it's just factually incorrect, and it's actually kind of yikesy. So more funding for police, pro police, Blue Lives Matter. Fuck Black Lives Matter. It's a Marxist organization.
So, Wake the Beast, you're next.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I think it's fundamentally impossible to understand other people. We identify as our memory. Dare I say, you are what you remember experiencing and going through, and the narrative that you've woven between that. What this means is that it's fundamentally impossible to understand each other since we can't transmit our memory. So usually when someone expresses a negative opinion about what I say, I typically let it go because your opinion of me is your own business. But since I feel as if someone on this panel is taking personal shots at me in a public way, I'm going to respond in a way that I feel is equivalently appropriate. Mr. Jake, you have the heart of a cat. Small, insensitive, lacking in courage and bravery, which is probably why you laugh when someone is addressing you seriously. See, cats look very brave. When they're confronted with danger, they show their teeth and their fangs, but they're really scared, which is why they pretend to be bigger than they actually are. And that's not too unusual from how weak men behave when they're confronted with something bigger than them. They also pretend to be brave. But in reality, your laughter reflects a lack of self-reflection. But the part of me that still respects you, Jake, will try to edify you with this. If you care to change people's hearts, you really have to touch them, right? If you want to change people's minds, you have to touch their heart, because before a person cares about what you know, you have to convince them that you care about them. So if your response to things you don't understand is to merely say, that's fucking stupid, well, ActualJake, you will be relegated to a position of an actual flake all on your own. Feel free to take swings at me. I will not be responding to you for the remainder of the evening. But I will answer the question.
We're not supposed to talk over people's-
Wait. I do want everybody to be clear. Everybody to be clear. This is intro, so everybody does need to be quiet during that. If you want to left out, if you want to yell or say words, there's always this magic device.
I thought I was muted.
It's called a mute button, and you gotta hit it. So
we have to
please finish.
Sure. We have to give ActualJake the benefit of the doubt. I really don't think he's capable of controlling himself. So we'll just give him a mulligan drop, if you will. In reality, should police departments be defunded in the big city? The answer is yes, but it's not going to happen because police departments have to police large populations in cities. And because they're so fragmented, the only conceivable government reaction is force. If we can't compel people to be on the same page and of one mind willingly, then we have to compel them by sanctions and by enforcing the law. If you want to know what the future of policing looks like, we only need to ask George Orwell. It looks like a human face being stamped upon indefinitely. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Wonderful. Next, I'm going to throw it over to RedGrayBlue, who it looks like their video is crystal clear now.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what the hell happened. I think my computer practically overheated. I actually was going to address something in my closing statement as well from the last, but I'll merge it into my intro. I do believe, ActualJake, that when you are actually considering the debate in general, I think it'd be productive for whatever your stance is to actually stop utilizing ad hom attacks, because that's something you consistently do regardless of their opinion. So, as far as things go, you have reasonable takes when you actually express them. But, I've seen you express several opinions where it's simply that's dumb, and then you laugh at them on air when everyone else can hear it. And if you don't know how the mute button works, wow, are you a streamer? And then so continue on in my view of defunding the police. I do believe that there are ways that we can redirect funding within society to construct a better policing service, quite honestly. I don't think that the police as a whole are a bad entity. I don't think that they are out to perpetuate harm against a particular group. However, I do think that there are more effective ways for society to engage in a service that would probably address more of the root issues as opposed to addressing symptoms. So although I do kind of slightly question the narrative behind defund the police and the mission put forward by BLM, I do respect the idea that there are other solutions that you can utilize when you are trying to create a more healthy and successful society.
I hate to be the defender of ActualJake on the streamer thing, but my mic was horrible tonight. You had disconnection problems. He doesn't know how to mute. We're all streamers, but we all suck at it. So that's something that is across all boundaries.
What happened is I deafened it and then went to undeafen it, and I just was unmuted in general. I accidentally deafened it instead.
No worries. Next, we're throwing it over to, I think I already did SuspectSushi, so I'm going to throw it over to Pisco.
All right, just to address a little ad hominem thing going on here, I just have to say, this is Wake the Beast. I've never in my life seen anyone say so little using so many words. Everything out of your mouth is a cavalcade of nonsense that doesn't deserve to be heard just because it's so detached from any coherent thought. We're all like much dumber for listening to you. That said, on the actual topic at hand, I think perhaps the question begs the answer. Should funding for local police departments be redirected? Local police departments vary. And in our country, state police departments, local police departments, they all have their particular issues and need to be addressed independently. So it's hard to make kind of generalized claims about policing when you're talking about redirecting funds, I think. That said, obviously there are some problems with policing. Though I do think people need to prove aspects of the problems they address. So one often brought up is specialization, that we should have police forces that are more specialized. I don't know that I suspect that could be helpful, but I think that needs to be proved. Maybe there's something helpful about having a generalist police force. And I don't know, I'm not making the claim that it is beneficial, but I think that claim needs to be proven. On police conduct in general, I think there's a problem. But I think that problem, as I think RedGrayBlue suggested, is indicative of much greater and deeper problems involving inequality and roots involving wealth and income, the drug war, housing, and education. This is not to say that we shouldn't talk about something just because it's not, the biggest problem. But I think a lot of airspace is being taken up with policies that I think will affect very little. If you want to see real change, I think you get policies that change fundamentally the wealth disparity in this country, that stop the drug war, that stop things like mandatory minimum sentences and help reform our judicial system. And I think these are sort of the linchpins. And this police reform stuff is, somewhat important, but kind of side dressing.
Okay. I will say for people in chat who are asking me, I try not to moderate like quote unquote personal ad hom or any of that. And the reason why is that a lot of people can, I do have found from chatters that they do take a lot from seeing somebody do that, and it helps inform whether like their opinion on that person, whether they're with them or against them. And I also don't want to moderate like how nice people are to each other. I just do my best to make sure everybody has a certain amount of time to say. And I do want to put this out there. This is my personal opinion. Wake the Beast has gotten a lot tonight, and the ability for him to always have a stone cold face, no matter anything. And I remember at a different time when we were talking that is part of his philosophy, to not get angered by words. So and seeing him have that same kind of thing here, I personally,
it's respectful.
It's respect. Yeah. I just wanted to put that out there. Next, I'm gonna throw it over to last username.
Absolutely. All funds should be redirected from the police back into the pockets of the people it came from, the taxpayers. And then those taxpayers can spend their money on their own security, but they can choose who they hire to do that. I don't think the government needs to do policing at all. I think we can see the results of that, which are an incredibly a police force that's incredibly difficult to hold accountable, that has special rights that no one else has, and that is causing this massive rift in society. We may have to expand the rights of everyone somewhat, so that people have the authority to enough rights in order to protect themselves from crime, in order to pursue justice. And what exactly those would be, I don't know. We can discuss that. It'd probably be something somewhat less power than police have now, but somewhat more power than ordinary citizens have now. So some sort of compromise. But regardless, I think everyone should have those rights. I don't think there should be a special class of people called police who have special authority to do things. I think whatever rights are necessary to pursue justice, or we think are acceptable to pursue justice, they're rights that everyone should have. And we'll all have to make a decision about what exactly those rights are. What rights are we willing to let everyone have in order to do that? And I think that is one of the only real well thought out actual solutions to the problem of policing that I've heard lately. We've heard a lot of people talking about, redirecting funds from the police in very little detail. And meanwhile, I've been, talking about this idea for a year now, before it was cool. And other people were talking about it for decades before I was. So yeah, that's what I think.
Dario, have you gone yet? I don't believe you have.
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw it over to Dario, and then after it's gonna be Jake.
Sure. So I guess I'll also just address the topic and not engage in none of the other stuff. Should funding for, the redirection of funds, I think that's like a fundamentally different question than like defunding. I mean, if we want to go into like defunding or like, I guess, removing funds from the police, we can. In terms of like redirecting funds, like just like having the same amount of funds, but like moving it around to like other stuff, I would say, yeah, probably. Depends on the specific department and like their needs or whatever. But I think generally the way that I think policing should be done in a society is generally having like less boots on the ground, but have a higher quality of fabric of the boot, right? So I would say less police officers like policing like areas, or like police every area the same amount. But the way that policing currently gets done, I think that generally leads to bad outcomes for certain societies. It leads to over policing. It leads to all kinds of bad things. And a lot of the reason for that is because, it seems like there's a ton of police officers in general. And depending on, I guess, what you want for society, if you're interested in just like the best outcomes, I think we can look at like data-driven studies that talk about the different outcomes of like how much policing should be done in different areas and like what you should spend funding on. I think, to my knowledge, obviously there's like a varied amount of training at different places in the United States because it's such a huge place. But generally, I think spending more money on training and like having better trained officers to deal with like a bunch of different situations, I think that's probably a good thing to spend more funding on. Yeah.
Wonderful. And last but not least, the cat.
I got to unmute.
There you go.
The cat. So I haven't actually used any ad hominems, but calling someone a cat and like a weird face, that is an ad hominem. Saying you're stupid is not an ad hominem. It's just like you're stupid, which is fine. You don't have to engage with that. That's okay. I understand. But that's not what ad hom means. It's definitely an insult, and you could say that that's rude or whatever. That's fine. But as far as the police are concerned, I guess if you want people with guns approaching people in incredibly mentally unstable situations, that's definitely one way to do it. it often leads to violent outcomes due to escalation, especially in cases where, again, you had not only the autistic child, but you had the caretaker of a severely autistic man a couple of years ago with his hands up, laying on the ground with his hands up, and he was just shot dead because he was trying to advocate for his patient. Like, this is not a situation where we need people with guns pointed at it. There was no one, and often there are no people in danger. You need someone to be able to take care of the very specific situation. Now, that said, Sushi said something, of course, incredibly reductive and dumb again, when he said something like, whoa, you just want a bunch of social workers going when there's like an active shooter in a school? No, redirecting funds from some police officers doesn't mean we won't have the guys with guns and militarized armor and all of the shit that goes along with the thing that you like Blue Lives for, which again is a job and not an actual color of a life. For someone's innate color of their skin does in fact have a bearing on the quality of life that they live in, not the job that they choose to have freely, which you would say is the free market and is part of the bootstrapsy thing. Just pick a different job, forehead kind of thing, right? So if you think that the job is really, really dangerous and super stressful, and sometimes they have justified reasons to take someone's life without trial in the streets of America and killing a sovereign citizen, I'm going to have to just gently nudge against that and say that maybe you're just fighting an ideological war rather than one that seems to have any ethics based in it or any reasonable amount of understanding of law, any reasonable understanding of like politics or how society works systemically or in day-to-day life, just without even a systemic lens. There's no reason to have anyone's safety infringed because we have police officers with militarized weapons. Notwithstanding, this is going to make the last username a little uncomfortable. The proliferation of guns in the Second Amendment is definitely another reason why police officers feel very uncomfortable, specifically in America, because everyone can potentially be strapped to the teeth. Which again, I'm not anti-guns, but it does actively fit into the reason that police officers find so much stress, say in a pullover situation where they pull someone over. The reason that they are on edge is because someone could potentially have a gun and use it on that officer. I don't know what the answer to that issue is, because I don't think we should ban all guns, but that's definitely a thing. If you care about police officers, you should also care about responsible gun ownership and restrictions upon the Second Amendment that include stuff like mental health checks, background checks, stuff like that. And if you don't, I don't see how you don't find those congruent to want to make sure that the United States is caring about blue lives in the way that you say they ought to. I mean, let's not even get into like first responders and how they're shit on by the economy, and like fucking 9/11 people. This is the anniversary of 9/11, totally abandoned by our Congress with healthcare and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but yeah, should be redirected to more specialized agencies, definitely, for some stuff, for sure.
Wonderful. Okay, we're going to go into open format. I just wanted to remind chat that I really enjoy putting this show together. We have spicy moments. We have moments of intense disagreement, but it's tough to get 8 people in the same room every single Friday. And if anybody would like to help me run that show, gifting a few subs, doing any direct donos, I really appreciate it. And I heard of this amazing program, and this is something that's bipartisan, is that you can actually use this thing you get for free called Twitch Prime that I'd really appreciate. Anyway, I'm going to throw it to open forum. I see that there's a few people raising their hands. SuspectSushi has jumped on these really quick a few times, so I'm going to actually throw it to somebody who hasn't got the first attempt yet, which is RedGrayBlue. I'm going to let him take it off.
I'm just going to make one quick comment that, when we're discussing what an ad hom is and we say that it's an attack on a character, I do believe that saying you are stupid is an ad hom. Maybe I'm calling it rude. It does seem like an attack on character.
An ad hom specifically is where you say something like, you have a dumb face and therefore you are wrong. You having a dumb face can be independent of your
if you're not going to break down the argument,
name calling. It's just name calling.
It's just name calling. It's not an ad hom. No, I'm totally fine with you saying it's name calling. It's just not an ad hom. That's just for your own.
Yeah.
It's an attack on character. You're attacking his fundamental character that he's an intelligent individual. That you're fundamentally calling him stupid.
I said
hominem
that,
adjective of an argument of reaction directed against a person rather than the position they are maintaining.
I said the position that he maintained was stupid. I didn't say he was stupid. And then
Red Gray.
he then called me like a furry or something. It was something.
No, I said you have the heart of a cat, which you
Listen,
demonstrated.
listen. You know
I just
what?
want to remind you, Red Gray, that you're arguing with the guy who's wearing corn on his head. You will not fix him. Just let him be.
Wait, what's wrong with corn on my head?
All right. Anyway, I want to get
happening?
into. I want to address Pisco. All right, and to a lesser extent, Actual Snake. So basically, what I want to say is this:
Actual Flake, please.
the way you addressed Wake the Beast is kind of interesting. You said that he said a lot of words without saying anything, and I found it pretty interesting because I actually had a fight to stay awake during your opening statement of the first topic. Like and also another thing is like I actually really originally I didn't really believe in clean energy, but after hearing you and Actual Snake talk for an abnormal amount of time, I 100% believe in wind energy, purely for coming from both of you. All right.
Really?
And also another thing that is thicker than your fucking ego is your eyebrows. Okay, just saying.
Okay.
So about
Wait,
police
wait.
funding, about police funding.
Okay. As much as I won't legislate kindness, there's also a topic which
Come
I
on.
don't believe is at all correlated.
Stop avoiding
with-
talking about my amazing
unless
form idea, guys.
unless Pisco's eyebrows somehow correlate to your police policy, I would like to bring it back to the topic at hand.
It's impossible to understand other people because you can't read their minds. It's impossible to understand other people. That was my great point. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just
That's reminiscent of a man I took to a film once. I actually took a blind man to
I
a movie
honestly
once.
don't give a
Oh,
shit
God.
about
Okay. We are completely done talking about this. We're completely done talking
So would
about
people?
Wait,
would
Dario,
people be against-
I'm gonna mute you. Okay, look, I was talking. That's the first rule. So anytime I talk, everybody gets quiet. Okay, so we are as much as entertaining as it is to see you interact on this front. To see Catboy and storyteller Wake the Beast go at it. As much as it's fun to see this happen, we do have a topic at hand, and we have about 30 minutes left. So if we don't get to it, we're gonna just have to completely skip the topic and save it for another show. And people researched it, so I would hate for all that work to go to waste. Demon Mama, I think you're gonna bring us to the topic, so I'm gonna throw it to you.
there are I feel like I've lost half the topic in this, but I there were a couple of claims that I wanted to engage with. But the first one I think that needs to be said is Sushi's baseless claim about the only people who believe in defunding or refund or moving funds from the police being BLM Marxists, which to me just sounds like a base level appeal to conspiracy based on nothing. There are a lot of people who have proposed various ways of defunding, various ways of moving the police long before BLM was even a movement. The prison abolition movement is one such movement that has long called for a reprioritization of funds. So you're this idea that your little boogeyman, which you have a huge grudge against, is the source of this argument is just patently silly. Now, with regard to last username, I do appreciate an approach to policing that is much less focused on sort of state instituted armed wing. I don't think that we can just say, let's give this to private corporations either. The problem that we have with policing is that, there's a number of issues with it. Here in the United States, we have an incredible amount of laws. There are incredible amounts of things that are illegal. There are places that have minimum sentencing laws. There are places where communities are for example, in New York, with what you have with stop and frisk, where a square mile of New York City was focused on by the police to such a degree that there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of stops in this tiny area of New York, which is just phenomenal. The amount of searching for people doing things wrong that you're looking to do, and all of this fuels into our massive prison population. We need to confront the fact that just making things against the rules and then sending the police out to beat you and then pull you into prison is not a way that you make a working society. This constant apologia for the police just because they are the police with no question of their authority, to me, is just beyond belief. But I also think that we need to recognize that that just removing the police and giving that to private security would replicate those exact problems and worsen them. Once you add a profit margin in there, it would have an unbelievable conflict of interests.
What's the conflict?
Wait, a conflict of interest between private and arresting people, like a private organization being used to arrest and enforce the law? I think there's huge issues with that. Absolutely. 100%. Wait, you don't see anything wrong with someone being able to pay the police, the biases that those police would then have?
We already pay the police.
Well, I mean,
not directly,
very removed, in a very, very, very abstract way.
But okay, wait. So wait, I think there's an argument here. Okay, so what happens right now is that yes, the police is getting paid, and I do believe that there's like a power imbalance in society in terms of like who actually pays the police and who the police are more incentivized to, I guess, favor in certain contexts and laws, right? I mean, generally like poor people get one end of the stick and like richer people like get another end of the stick. I don't know. I think there's a criticism there to be in terms of like who pays the police, even in like in the societies that exist today, and probably like in different kinds of societies as well.
You pop the collar, it's on.
I have a question for the panel. Do you guys know how most local police departments are funded?
No, enlighten us.
So usually it's local state taxes. So the question I have is, if you want to redirect funds, redirect them where? To other sort of sub agencies within the local department? We wouldn't think it's proper for local taxes to be, redirected to other places, right?
So it's redirected it's not redirected to like, a non-policing situation. It's just changing the idea of what a police officer necessarily is. Like you can have factions of police officers. We already do. We stratify police officers, right? Like you have like a even within a particular police precinct, you might have detectives. You might have someone that deals specifically with financial stuff. You might deal with so it's just specializing the police really is what's taking place and reducing the ability for escalation based on the fact that they have weapons on them at times, and that often the types of police officers that do have weapons. 40% of all police officers right now are abusers. That is a thing that is an actual statistic. If that confuses you, can look it up. Domestic abuse specifically.
Where is this? 40%? Where does this statistic come from?
This is just, I mean, you
like
can just
convicted of domestic abuse?
No. Just look it up.
Yes.
Citation needed, my guy.
Yeah.
Yes, domestic abusers. But anyway, so
okay.
But even beyond that, even if it's 20%, even if it's 10%, right? That's much higher than it's 40%. But even if it wasn't, even if it was whatever you don't want it to be, it's a situation where we have a very specific type of personality that tends to enter these types of jobs.
Well, we would need to know the rate for everyone, right? It wouldn't be enough to just know the police rate, because it could be, in fact, lower, right? I understand
the police rate is higher than the average populace by quite a bit. But even so, and we do have an underreporting issue with domestic violence in general, so who knows? But even so, the police also tend to police themselves, which is a big problem. You don't have like an oversight issue where you can have different stratification. So it's not when most people, when they say like abolish the police, don't mean it the way that last username means it, where it's like get rid of the police, privatize it, and like let's hire fucking private militias. Really, what it is abolish the police as we know it and make it beneficial for all types of people. Like when a house burns down, we don't necessarily need the police with guns there, but you do need someone that is able to cordon off section of the road, make sure that the fire trucks or whatever, the EMTs have safe passage, and to make sure that you can maintain a barriers to make sure that public safety is at large. But you don't need those people to also have M16. So this is it's just the different ways that we can make sure to ensure the operator that takes the call has enough information to determine what is reasonable. And if you can't, then sometimes you're going to end up in a situation where a guy has a gun and we probably shouldn't have a gun, and maybe something bad happens. But you can at least try to make sure that we specialize the type of response to the specific type of thing that's happening. You don't necessarily want a traffic officer
What are
going
the
in.
situations right now where we
Right.
dispatch a police officer with a gun and we don't need to?
Well, mental health breakdowns is a fantastic idea.
Oh, there's
Hey,
quite a lot,
actually, I'm a 911 dispatcher. Can I talk about this? Like, I'm literally a 911 dispatcher.
You can in a second. Right now, I'm talking to last
Well,
username.
I would do after you two. We only have like 25 minutes left, so I want you two to finish it up, and then I'll throw it over to Sushi. But Sushi, you're also a panel guest, so you can speak about it basically whenever. But
Yeah.
Sushi, yeah.
I mean,
Jake, and less username, you can finish.
Well, okay, so I just want to know, like, I've heard a lot of things like,
Yeah.
like we could have different kinds of people that respond to different situations, and some of those people wouldn't need to have guns, therefore there'd be no danger of these escalations.
It's not
and
just guns;
brutality.
it's also a specialization of their particular capability to take care of a situation, right? Like you wouldn't want a social worker going into a situation where there was an active shooter, right? That wouldn't necessarily be the ideal situation. You might want someone that is proficient at negotiating with active shooters, not necessarily someone that's good at family counseling. It works both ways. It's not like
Okay, but so I want to know how many cases of excessive police use of force have been cases where we didn't even need to send in someone with a gun. We could have sent in someone without a gun, and that would have avoided whatever excessive use of force happened.
That's my question too. Like, how much
mean
is
shooting
help?
deaths specifically.
This is really going to help.
Anything where excessive force was used, and you think it could have been prevented by having this other system where we didn't send in.
Well, like
police.
I don't think unless the police are being fired
can touch
upon,
on that if you want.
there's a justifiable reason to execute someone without a trial, right? And I think that's a violation of constitutional rights. Unless you're in self-defense, right? Because often they're not in self-defense. Not often, but often enough to where we're discussing this, where we find a situation unlawful killing, or maybe it's not even necessarily a gun, but it's someone that already has that aggressive mindset. Because police, again, they have a stressful job, they tend to work a lot of hours, and this is, it's a broader systemic problem. But we don't want to talk about capitalism, so we won't talk about it. But there are broader systemic issues that come into play when you take in a case like the class of these people and stuff like that.
So, like, how many police calls could you safely send in someone who wasn't armed, and they wouldn't be at a significant risk?
Well, here's the thing, though.
So how many
we're speculating here at the
are
moment.
safe to
I think
send in an unarmed person?
If I can touch on this real quick,
Right, but
Okay, real quick, and then I want to throw it over to Sushi because he's
I
waiting
just want to touch on this particular issue, which is that there is no doubt that like situations. We could even look at the killing of George Floyd, right? That was one where it was just these people came in with a lot of power in their hands and a lot of ways to use that power. And even if they didn't use the guns, the presence of those guns makes them feel safe enough to use that type of power. And as we can see, the results are terrifying. I think one of the things we have to be very careful of in our society is how we distribute power, because when you give power, it's very hard to sort of to take that back. It's very hard to stop it once the power has been distributed. In my mind, police are given an incredible amount, an unbelievable amount of leeway with the powers that they're given in our current situation, to the degree that they not only respond to many different types of calls, but also that they go into situations with a lot of power on their belt. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. Sometimes literally military gear, which is just unbelievable.
Okay, but we're not talking about taking away their leeway. We're talking about literally taking away their guns.
Oh no, we absolutely are. We absolutely are talking about their leeway. I think that by pulling
No.
Yes, we are. By defunding, for example, by defunding the police and lowering the amount of arms available, that lowers the amount of power any individual police department can wield. By saying, hey, you guys actually can't have an army of police officers on stand with for no reason, for just because of we're just increasing policing, we're just bumping it up and having more police. No, we actually need to put this money towards other things. And I think it's sort of a while I do think that the sort of redirecting funds from the police elsewhere is a little bit reductive, because I do believe that we have more than enough budget to go around. This sort of, but that's neither here nor there. I do think it's possible for us to say, hey, let's even for people who believe that the police are an institution that needs to stick around, why don't we try dumping a whole bunch of money into those social services that every single sociologist, every single professional who has any sort of actual access to data on this has said, hey, these economic reliefs, having things for people to do, having things for children to do, so they're not just milling about getting into trouble. These are great things that you can do for neighborhoods that would reduce their crime. And then we might see that the demand for the police would go down if there are alternatives. But you can't just force people to live in a concrete, in like a concrete wasteland and then have nothing there and then just expect that throwing armed guards to beat them up and throw them in prison is going to solve the problem.
Okay, but I mean, I think you need to decouple the issues of like let's improve society in other ways to try to reduce the need for a police, and let's defund the police. Like having that, like doing that in one step doesn't seem to make sense to me. Like taking the money away from police.
I do. I mean, we only have like 19 minutes left, so I gotta throw it over to Suspect.
Okay, so I find it pretty interesting. Okay, so basically, Jake, I have a question for you. Do you know what is necessary information that you have to get before an officer is sent out to the scene of anything at all? Personally,
what kind of stuff do you
like
need,
when someone calls 911, do you know the pertinent information you get, like the framework, whether or not you can use your own leeway to advise an officer whether or not to bring extra people, things of this nature? Do you know any of those things?
I mean, so address, probably the type of crime that you need, the number of people involved, where you're at currently, what you're experiencing.
Okay.
So are you talking about your as a 911 operator's experience?
No, I'm basically asking you. You at least know the foundation here, but do you understand that when there's a response, even when with cited mental health issues, do you understand what scene safety is?
What scene safety is? You have to make sure that there's an armed police officer at the scene.
Yes. Okay. So when an officer has to so even if you want social workers or things of this nature,
that's a thing that I want to change.
Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is, it's within the own regulations of like paramedics and things of this nature, or if you want social workers, they have to have somebody who can protect these people in case shit pops off. So when you say
unless we change the law,
people should just you're saying that these people should just go there willy-nilly, and if something happens, it just happens. Whatever.
Wait a second.
Like what kind of fucking shit is that?
Wait, this right here is really important because you're assuming that every single call is going to be violent. We have this assumption.
No. Do you not listen to what I said? I said if something pops off, they're shit out of luck.
Wait. No, because if something changes about the circumstance, you can still then later dispatch a specialized unit that would be able to handle something.
I'm even fine if you have
Wait.
I'm even fine. Hold on, wait. I'm even fine if you have an armed police officer out of the scene, the direct scene. If you have an armed police officer, maybe down the stairs, if it's an apartment complex, I'm fine with the idea of protecting your officials if something pops off.
How quickly do you think it takes for somebody to end someone else's life?
Wait, hold on.
Potentially.
Wait.
No, Demon, I'm asking him a question.
It's really irrelevant.
It's not. No, it's not irrelevant. No. I asked ActualJake a question, and you're trying to insert yourself. It's not your time.
Let him answer the question. Ask the question. Okay. Then I'll throw it over back to you, Demon Mama. I promise.
Okay, it's irrelevant. There you go, Demon Mama.
Do you want to know why? Why do you think it's irrelevant? No. Why is it irrelevant? If you said if an officer needs to be a distance away for where they can't actually react to the situation at hand, how is that irrelevant? Someone could die very, very quickly. Someone could get stabbed. Someone could get shot. Any of those things.
Yes,
and you're trying to actually make it harder for the social worker to feel safe and effectively do their job if there isn't an officer nearby. What are you talking about?
How that person? So that person is just going in like. If they think that there's a capability for violence, do you think that person isn't going to take any precautions on the way? I don't think a gun prevents you from getting shot at.
It definitely increases your chances of survival.
Do we
have the data?
No. You get shot at, you should bring it up.
Listen.
No, exactly.
Everybody be quiet. Everybody be quiet. I don't care.
No.
I don't care. Wait. Jake. You don't say no to me. I say no to you.
Well,
okay?
I thought I was saying no to Sushi.
Well, but I was talking, so then it became a no to me.
Well, then you interrupted me with your no-no-nos, which trumped my no-no-nos.
Yeah, well, and your no-no-nos are now gone, and it's my turn, okay? So, okay.
Damn no-no-nos.
That's how it works. I'm sorry. Sorry, Corn Boy. Corn Cat. There it is. Demon Mama. Corn Pop. Demon Mama, you have been wanting to interact with Suspect for a very long time. You may now do so.
Yeah, I just the idea that like we should assume homicidal intent in every emergency call is precisely the culture that I'm talking about. Here in America, we have this assumption that everyone is constantly trying to kill each other, and that justifies us continually ramping up the amount of violent anti-violence people that need to be on hand. I mean, what's the thing? Do you need to have a escort by a police department tank in order to go down to the store to buy something? Like, that's absurd. You're justifying a police state because something bad could happen. If you get a call and there's somebody who is having a mental health crisis, there is nothing to say that would be inherently violent. There are all kinds of types of mental health crises that do not turn violent, and you could actually.
How often does that actually happen?
Wait,
How often do you
very
get a call?
frequently.
where it's
Very
like
frequently.
someone's having a mental health
No,
crisis.
she's
but
talking
it
bullshit.
Show us your stats, man. Show us the
No.
stats, right? Because I mean, you're
I
asking
don't think
for the
the
same
police
thing.
would. I don't think the police would go to that situation if there was no chance of it's violent. They're like, well,
hold on a second. Wait a second. Hold on. A lot of this is going to vary based on where you live. Here in, at least, and I can only really speak for the place I'm familiar with, here in Seattle, mental health calls are often, very, very frequently handled by police officers. That's something I disagree with strongly. Sushi himself just a few seconds ago said that he has some rule that he follows that always says somebody armed needs to be on hand. I don't agree that that's the case.
What kind of mental health call? What kind of mental health call has no chance of being violent and is still you call the police?
Wait. But it's not that nothing has no chance of being violence. It's that you don't need to assume violence. Listen, you don't need to assume violence in every single emergency call that comes.
So the violence is so unlikely that you can just go unarmed and assume that.
Yes.
And that's probably not
Both emergency.
Okay.
So what kind of call is it?
Absolutely.
And how often does the police get called to do
Wait
that?
a minute. Okay, are you asking how many calls are reports for crimes and or emergencies that aren't murder or that aren't armed murder? Because the statistics, the statistics are very bad in your favor there.
Chance of violence for it to be.
Okay, are we done yet? So I can tell you how you're wrong.
Seems to me anything
Wait,
we're
no.
gonna.
Fuck this. Like, you can't all just try to talk over me while asking me 15 questions and then going off and saying stupid bullshit like, oh, BLM is a Marxist organization, and then it's like I don't actually get to talk when you ask me a direct question. That is so silly. That is so unbelievably hilarious.
So addressing the topic of redirecting funding within the police, does anybody here think that the current funding of let's say the average police department is spent in a perfect way? Would you like to see any redirections at all? Any improvements? I would like to hear.
I'd like to increase funding.
Make about these.
No, but so redirection, right? Do you believe in believe that some things aren't done sufficiently enough currently?
No, and in fact, me seeing the quality of equipment that certain police organizations get, I would increase funding. But let me derail once again.
Nobody is talking about.
Wait.
You didn't answer.
Demon Mama.
I did. I literally did. I don't agree with redirecting. He asked me that question. I said no.
I have a hard time taking this seriously when we allow these broad postulations from people to say
Demon Mama, don't make me do it.
Anyway, so I was trying to say is you said we shouldn't just assume violence, and most officers when they respond to a call don't assume violence unless there's already a violence being cited in our notes and our CAD, and when we talk our CAD system and we're talking to them over the radio, informing them of the decision and it's up in its developments. But here's the thing: I actually had to listen to an officer be fucking shot. Right? Do you know what the call was about? It was about a skunk in the yard. All right. So don't fucking sit here and tell me that there isn't a prospect of violence at any possible time. I literally
said the opposite.
No, it's my time.
Come on, don't
let him finish.
Mental health issues, things that are not violent, fireworks complaints, ATV complaints, it doesn't fucking matter. An officer can be shot at any given time. People can make up bullshit premises. People could try to be doing suicide by cop. All these things could potentially happen. But you're saying let's just send a social worker out there with no scene safety whatsoever. It's fucking ridiculous. Unless you say, hey, let's make social workers be trained fucking mental health professionals, but also give them a fucking gun and a flak jacket. I'm sorry, and a bulletproof vest. I'd be cool with that. So I mean, which one would you like?
Citizens like insurgents.
Okay, so Demon Mama, you responded. Then I'm throwing over the gray.
Please, first of all, I literally said that the idea that I said anything about that anything can't turn violent. Anything can turn violent. You walking to the store to get a burger could turn violent. But when you build your society on the assumptions that everyone around you is constantly trying to kill you, you're going to have some pretty bad outcomes. That is not the way that you should run a public safety organization. I'm not finished.
Let me get. No. We gotta let him finish.
So when you have these wild assumptions, it leads to a continual marching forward of increased militarization, where the cases where there is violence are more violent because you have every single nonviolent case potentially being responded to by, in your words, a social worker with a gun and a flak jacket. I mean, all right, by that logic, let's just send a tank to every call because we might want to be safe. You never know, they might have a bazooka or a landmine. It's just absurd. This is the type of thing that justifies the endless march forward of surveillance. It's the type of thing that justifies every single authoritarian government smashing the boot down on other people. This is the justification. It's, oh my God, what if the bad people that I'm going to vaguely gesticulate about are going to shoot me? And it's like, is that actually even a risk?
Okay,
And the thing is it a reasonable risk?
Okay, wait, we got 9 minutes left, and so many people haven't talked. Gotta throw it over to RedGrayBlue, and then after I'll throw it to Dario, and then it'll go to last username.
I take issue with the assumption that fundamentally that we are default sending armed police out to deal with mental health issues, because I'm looking at a study right here from the Journal of American Academy of Psychiatry and Law, and it says that there's 1,000 people that were fatally shot by police in 2018, and of those people, 25% were mental illness individuals. Now, so don't get me wrong, I fully understand and agree with the idea that we should not have armed response individuals necessarily addressing all issues. I'm with you there. However, I think that it is a bold statement to claim that police are automatically dispatched to every single mental health, or like that is the default mindset that you're putting forward. Right?
I never said
and I
that it
don't
was
think
the
that we
default.
fund. Hold on, I'm still speaking. I'm speaking. I'm
let
sorry.
him finish.
Am I speaking? Am I going deaf? Holy moly!
That'd be
So
bad.
when you're,
Continue.
thank you. When we're dealing with like the assumption of like whether or not we are indeed sending police out there first, I would love to see the stats that you're putting forward to demonstrate that we are doing that. And don't get me wrong, I want to address that as well. But I recently spoke to a paramedic friend on my stream, and he says, well, we don't normally send out police for a situation where, you know, it's just a mental health issue. But if it becomes a mental health situation of like increasing violence, well, then obviously we send a police with a request backup when we secure ourselves immediately. So, you know, to say that, of course, we need to address this with the appropriate resources, I agree. But also, please demonstrate to me that we are indeed sending only armed police to address these issues. Now, 250 people is 250 people too much. But at the same time, like, show me that there's this overwhelming disposition to abusing those that are mentally ill.
Wait,
that as the default.
None
for the
of those
police.
things are the things that I even claimed. Like, you're just literally arguing against somebody else. You cited statistics that actually prove my point, which is that we rely on the police for a lot of things. If 25% of the killings are mental health crises, that's phenomenally huge. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I never once said that the majority of cases, I never said that this is always the case. I said it contributes to a culture that we see this as a predominant amount. And if you truly believe that 250 people being shot during a mental health crisis is an okay statistic, then I don't know what to tell you. We just view the world.
I just told you it's not okay, so don't try to paint me as an individual that's not that way.
But that's what I'm saying. And if you don't believe that that's true, then you should recognize that this is a huge problem and that we're dispatching armed police too frequently.
Okay.
250 people out of the entire population of the United States. Don't get me wrong, too much, right?
Killed
But you're somehow painting the
unjustly.
picture that
There is
overall.
so many issues with that. That is not just the fact that they died. 250 people executed by police.
I agree with you.
Now,
I
I
said it's
fucking
too
said
much,
that.
right?
It's like you're waiting
that's-
for someone to finish their sentence, but not listening to the sentence.
No,
itself.
don't even try, because like you guys have like misframed my argument like 6 times.
Okay.
Like, no,
Do-
I'm doing my best to engage.
Do you? Do you?
Yeah, we gotta. We have very little time left, so I'm gonna throw it to Dario, last username, and I saw Jake raise his hand, and then we're going to finishing statements. So if you want to say anything, you get a whole extra uninterrupted minute. For everybody who wants an uninterrupted time, you get it. Okay, so next is Dario.
Purse. Okay. Do you like I'm curious, like, do the panelists think that generally, like, the U.S. police force, that it should receive more training, or if the training is adequate? Right. So like what I'm advocating for, and I mean, I would assume that most people would agree, but like maybe not, right? That like maybe some funds can be spent from like other places and spend on like more police training to like handle different kinds of situations. And yeah, maybe you can have like police officers that are specifically trained to handle medical emergencies, right? They can be trained as police officers and as like more like medical emergency personnel type people. Right, like I mean, is that unreasonable? I guess.
Is this closing statements or still open?
This is still
No,
open,
it's
so
not.
I'll allow one person to respond to it. Then we'll go into the next person. I'm just trying to wrap it up before closing.
Sure, I'd
Sorry,
like to increase funding and also increase training. I would like officers to be like taught in like BJJ and things like this, so we can fucking put somebody in an arm triangle instead of like tasering them.
Sorry, I think the answer to that is it depends on the municipality. It depends on the locality. I don't know how we can make these broad statements about any tactic of police when they're so differentiated in this country.
Does it though? Like, is there some municipalities, like some cities that don't need police officers that have like mental health, like training how to deal with like those
I don't
cases?
know.
I mean,
I think it needs to be proved.
I mean,
I don't take it as a given.
I mean, keep in mind here in the United States, on the topic of training, here in the United States, we have a phenomenally low amount of training for our police
yeah,
officers.
that's where I'm getting at.
That's
right?
a
Like, compared-
misconception. There's considerably more training than people like to let on.
Well,
No, actually,
well, I mean,
know
just because
exactly
so
It's
just
not.
because there's more than like some people make it out to be, doesn't mean that it's sufficient or that it's enough compared to like world standards, right? So I
Okay,
mean,
how much
like,
training is for you? What's an arbitrary number? How much? How long do they need to be in police academy?
like,
Not like 2 years, 3 years. What quantifies well trained for you?
When are we
10
done
years.
with training?
So,
no.
the minimum,
you said
the minimum
10 years,
requirement
okay.
of Michigan police officers where I live is 594 hours. Do you think that that's a reasonable
is
amount of
that?
time? Is that reasonable?
No, I was just asking his one personal numbers.
How much is
for
that in
instance, like
days?
ours is different.
Do you think
In West Virginia, ours is different.
594? So 40-hour work weeks, right? We can judge. That's roughly. Was that roughly? Almost 15 work weeks. Like roughly. Not good. That's not great. It's not a great number.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so
training?
in the state of
So-
West Virginia, you have police academy for 7 to 8 months. Then you also, before that, you also have to have a degree in criminal justice, and then on top of that, you are basically like you're buddy copying it for like
A degree
I think
in
another
criminal
6
justice
months.
is an associate's degree. It's
Okay.
an associate's degree.
Okay,
I mean,
I just said a degree. I just said a degree in
right?
I
Right,
just said a degree in
but it's
criminal
an
justice.
associate's
So
degree.
you need okay. I don't give a shit. Anyways, a degree in criminal justice. Then you got to go for about
That's what it
6 to
always
7
comes down
months.
to.
7 to 8 months. Then you are
So,
basically
okay.
sitting buddy cop with
Sure.
a senior officer for another 6 months, and then you're out on your own. I think it's a decent amount.
594 hours. Yes, I agree. So,
That's not what I said.
just for reference on something that you need a little bit more expertise for is if you want to work on a sign that has an electrical system, like a neon sign or something like that. You're not allowed to do so by the government until you reach 4,000 hours of expertise within a field to do that alone. So, I mean, like if we're dealing with and I think we can agree that people are a bit more complex than an electrical sign. I think we maybe should maybe not make it arbitrary, but maybe we should make it akin to that of, say, a nurse or something, someone that needs an incredible amount of expertise in multiple fields, because it's a very important job. It's a job that deserves.
Isn't that more costly?
Yeah, and just
Isn't it more costly? Isn't that- isn't
I
that
actually have another
Wait,
question.
wait,
Hey,
wait,
Snake.
wait,
just to add,
hold on, I'm not
just to
done.
add on that.
What degree do you have, by the way?
Wait, okay, that
Not
literally.
done.
Okay, and no longer. That doesn't even. Why does that matter? Okay, look, Jake. You finish up, then I gotta throw it to last, and then we gotta wrap this up because we're about to go over the time.
Okay, so the idea here is that even if it's costly, your idea here again it runs. I mentioned we didn't want to get into capitalism, but it does in fact have a huge issue here. You are pay gating lower wage people out of and lower class people out of being able to be quality police officers to police their own communities, which is another huge problem. Not to mention you wanted to increase funding for police. I'm so fine with having increased wages for police officers in a situation where we can make sure that more ethical policing is occurring to make sure that the class issues that we face are mitigated. So to make sure that there's less stress on people that have such important jobs. So, I mean, the same thing goes for like doctors, where you don't want them working 80 hours a week because you want them to be at tip-top shape when they're working on your damn heart. But still, it happens because, again, we price the lower class out of a lot of these professions, and that's a problem. That's not a good thing for capitalism. It's not a good thing for America. It's not a good thing for the citizens. It's not a good thing for people that are experiencing policing. It's not a good thing for anybody. So this is incredibly important. And to deny the systemic issues that are around this, and just to deny basically everything that Demon Mama was saying is like wild to me. Like there's obvious reasons that we have certain institutions in this world and specifically in this country, and it just seems like you're just like, I don't know, throw more people at it, maybe that'll get better, but not more people with more expertise. You need people that are better at doing the job, not more people doing the job similarly. That could be my minute as well.
You fine with that being your minute? Sure. Okay.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I'll still give you time to do an outro. Last username. You wanted to wrap. You wanted to do a thing, and then we're gonna do wrap up.
Okay, my thing. It's so the claim, as I understand it, is that first of all, this is a solution to excessive use of police force, and that the solution is that there's a significant number of calls that police respond to that doesn't require an armed person to respond to it, and that we could have unarmed people respond to these things, and that those calls are calls in which a significant number of excessive uses of force have been happening, and therefore by sending unarmed people, we would avoid those excessive uses of force. I assume that is the argument. So imagine you are one of these people who doesn't have who's not allowed to be armed, and they have to respond to certain calls that the dispatcher decides, we don't need an armed person to go to this. Let's say like noise complaints. That's something that cops seem to do a lot. It doesn't seem all that dangerous, right? Just go knock on the party and say, hey, your neighbors are complaining, you keep it down a bit. Sure. Now, let's say you do one noise complaint every day, all year, for 20 years. That's something like, in the neighborhood of 6,000 or 7,000 calls in your life, and you're not armed for any one of them. If even like one or two out of those 6,000 or 7,000 calls turns out to be dangerous, maybe that party is not a party of nice, friendly teenagers. Maybe it's a crack house. Maybe it's actually a domestic dispute. Maybe there's something more going on when they called in the noise complaint. Like there's all sorts of shit that could happen. If that happens even once out of like a few thousand, then you're not going to survive to the end of your career. That's not an acceptable risk. No one is going to do a job that is that dangerous. You have to be able to do this job for 20, 30 years and be pretty sure that you're not going to die. And that's why police are armed. Like my understanding is that police, basically their job is to go respond to calls where you need someone who has a gun at that call or who can use force. Like that's what police do. And I don't understand what all these like all these things are where you definitely don't need a gun, and whether, and even if those things, there are those things, are those where the excessive uses of force are happening, right? Like, I don't understand. Like, do you have data to support this claim?
Next, I am going to start doing ending statements, and I'm going to start with Pisco.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I wanted to apologize to Wake the Beast and SuspectSushi. I thought I let my heat in the moment get the better of me, and even though I felt frustrated by the fact that I thought there were a lot of derails in what you two were saying, I shouldn't have lashed out in that ad hominem way, and for that I sincerely apologize. As for the topic at hand, I think that I'm a little bit disappointed. I thought we would be talking about sort of how funds would be sort of redirected on a local level. What are some good ideas for policies other than the kind of specialization debate, which I think is a little bit worn out. But in any event, I think I'm more or less with RedGrayBlue on some matters. So while I think that you could get some gains by perfecting the efficiency of your police department, I think those gains are ultimately going to be small potatoes compared to the underlying problems. And that, I fear, is we're at risk of letting this, what I consider to be ancillary problems, swallow up greater problems of racial inequality, which are more to do with wealth disparities, the drug war, education, and housing. So on that, thank you so much, Dylan, for letting me on the show, and thank you, everyone, and the panelists.
No problem. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Dario.
Yeah, so I mean, I wish we had more time to talk about specifically like the redirecting of funding and like what you would like to have funded as well. I think training is extremely important, and I think any reasonable person should conclude that if the police officers in some places in the United States have as little training as ActualJake was reading the stats about, then those police officers probably shouldn't go out in the field. I think that's like, I mean, that seems reasonable for like any person, right? And whether the solution is to redirect funding to secure more training to be able to deal with different kinds of circumstances in probably like one of the most dangerous situations in terms of like being able to constantly be afraid of your life because of the gun situation in the United States, I think it's very reasonable to require a sufficient amount of training. Now, what exact amount of months or years is required, I don't know, right? But it's probably not like a month or 2 months worth of training, or even like 5 months. I mean, it seems like for most jobs, like most jobs that are like professions, it requires years. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like in Denmark, I believe you have at least 3 years required training. And I don't know, like in the US, if it's like if it's like less than a year in a country that's so much more dangerous, where so many different kinds of situations can arise, it just seems crazy. And if the solution is like a redirection of funds into more training of new police officers, or even like an increase of funding, I mean, I think that's a reasonable thing to demand, at least. Yeah.
Okay, next is going to be last username. Even though you kind of got a thing, if you feel like you already said it, you can just
I get
pass.
another thing. Okay, so yeah, I mean, like I think what happened is someone came up with this slogan like defund the police, and then the left tried to sort of retroactively figure out what the hell it means, and they came up with all these harebrained ideas based on these ridiculous assumptions with no supporting data or anything. And occasionally this discussion sort of strays into actual like sensible ideas, like train police more. That's probably a good idea, but that's going to require more funding, not less. So it's obviously not the original idea. I'm just kind of sick of hearing about this. It's obvious that there are no like well thought out ideas here. Meanwhile, Notali talked about my well thought out idea, so I guess you all agree with it. So that's great, except Demon Mama, who said like, "Well, we can't just give corporations that money because they're corporations." But I mean, okay, so what? Why not? We can't just give the government that money because they're the government, whatever. So yeah, there we go. Good to be here. Good talk, guys. Thanks a lot to Dylan for having me on, and come check out last_username on Twitch to find out the real solution to policing.
Can't wait for part 97 of why school should not be mandatory. Can't wait for it. I'm excited for it. Throwing it over to ActualJake.
Well, first off, I had to check Sushi's stuff here about West Virginia. He was wrong. You have to be at least 21 years of age, no older than 39 years of age prior to enlistment. You need a high school diploma or a GED. You have to have a valid driver's license for 2 years. Applicants may test the age of 20, and then that's it. That's the whole thing. So that's where we start. That's the whole. I don't know. You don't really need a lot. Anyway, so beyond that, as far as the last username said, I did openly disagree with you insofar as like private police. That's not great. I don't think that you necessarily understand when people say defund the police. Again, it's defunding this version of the police and almost always replacing it with something else. You can even take a 1-to-1 ratio on the actual funds that you take from the policing and move it towards a new version of that. But it's making sure that we defund this current state of antagonistic policing, and not necessarily the just, I guess, moving the money to schools or something, which isn't really what the argument is. It tends to be the scenario where you just want to make sure that we're applying the best possible attention to whatever the thing may be. If it happens to be, we used a lot of mental health scenarios here with 25% of cases happen to be that. But yeah, sometimes they happen to be violent. And sometimes you're going to have to meet that with the people that can handle that kind of stuff. It's okay. And it's okay to be prepped for that kind of stuff too. But like, the idea that we shouldn't have incredibly specialized people doing this, and we just be like, well, I don't know, if they have a very bare minimum amount of education, it should be fine. It's a stressful job. How can you blame them? It's like, I just think we're not really listening to the underpinning issues here, which has to do a lot of the time with class, a lot of the time with the effects of the economic system in general, because crime is caused often by not just poverty, but also population density, which, I mean, has systemic issues with redlining and racism. I mean, there's just so many things to address when you talk about even this issue. And it seemed, I don't know, it just seems weird to not want to address those things in the discussion of it, because those are incredibly relevant. I mean, just from a historical perspective, which is what my degree is in. And so like, I don't know, it seems moderately ignorant to just hand wave at some of the stuff that we are. It doesn't seem productive. It seems like just throw more police at the situation when clearly the police aren't solving things or exacerbating problems. Like people are like right now rioting in streets and like peacefully protesting as well, like against police brutality, and in response to that the police brutalize them. Like that seems to run counter to the idea, right? Like wouldn't you want to show as police officers that you have some sort of solidarity? I don't know. But
Okay, can people find you somewhere, or should they
oh
just
yeah,
wander a
ActualJake.
cornfield, or how's it work?
ActualJake. Just go to ActualJake where you can we discuss all sorts
Find
of things.
Actually, Jake.
ActualJake, or you can look me up in the cat furry section. I will be there now. That's my new brand. I will have cat ears shortly. It's gonna be a good time, and we're gonna this is gonna be a great way. Hey, don't smile. That'll show you that you're a cat down there. Okay,
That's marketable now. You know, cat boys are marketable. Come
I
on.
don't want. Hey, don't. Real close to being a cat there.
Hey, there it is. Sushi.
All right. So first of all, you need to understand there's different guidelines. There's just overall guidelines for state police, and actually get down into the nitty gritty of like local municipalities, sheriffs, and sheriffs, local, state, reserve officers, and things of that nature. But that's fine. Anyway, basically, like quite literally, the ones that I've worked in tandem with required these things. But that's whatever. Anyway, I'd like also, by the way, that ActualJake basically just Googled how many hours it requires to be a police officer, got the first result, which was a CNN article, and read it word for word. So, like, if he thought that was like a cogent thought, all he does, it's my time. You're mute city, my guy. Basically, he just Biden quoted that shit, right? He's like, hey guys, this is my total fucking original thought. Anyway. Also, on top of that, I do find it interesting that people who get most of their information on policing got it pretty much primarily from Twitch. They don't actually talk with people who have been in the law enforcement capacity in any regard whatsoever, because they're all like ACAB people. They just have their masks on currently. Yeah. So when you talk about like mental health issues and saying it's like a majority of things, like you do know that most of the time it's like 75% of the time within mental health cases that are being reported, they're mostly just a disturbance. However, when they do bring paramedics and things of that nature, but officers still need to stay for scene safety. The over-militarization of police is a bullshit argument. Criminals will never adhere to any type of fucking armistice between themselves and a policing force. They're gonna fucking bring in armor-piercing rounds, things of this nature. They don't give a shit about fucking following the law. So why wouldn't we want our officers to be as well protected as possible? These people need to come home at night. Also, I think you referenced something about a tank. The last time I remember a tank ever being used by the police forces, like back during like fucking Reagan era drug war type shit, where they were fucking using like tanks to like knock down fucking crack houses and shit. And I'm fucking anti-drug war and shit. So that's a fucking stupid argument. Also, once again, the whole 40% of officers beat their wives or whatever. I believe that was in reference to a 1991 congressional testimony and then a 1992 article. Basically, you're using decades old, for lack of a better word, hearsay, because the sample size is too small, to basically dictate that all people are beating their wives. So, in fact, I ask you, ActualJake, when did you stop beating your wife? There you go.
Well, I'm you know what? I'm gonna throw something out there that I have a weird feeling that a cat he would not be able to do that, and also a corn would not be able to do either of those things.
True.
Therefore, he's innocent. He would not be able to find him guilty in a court of law. Next, I'm going to throw it to RedGrayBlue.
I think the breakdown, I guess, on how we would look at defunding the police, as proposed by ActualJake, was a commentary around specialization. And it seems to me that the policies that have been put forward since they have put forward the defund the police notion has largely been around not specialization. So, I mean, I think that it would be unfair to characterize it as really we're just trying to specialize, the police force to make them effective. Because you look at the city of Austin, they diverted some, 50 million to other social services to try to address some of the root problems. So I think defunding the police is actually less of a specialization focus and more of a focus on how do we provide social services to other organizations. And New York's done the same thing. Minneapolis is looking to do the same thing as well. So, I mean, to me, specialization, I agree. I think it's good that we do that better. But I think defund the police is more often, in my opinion, at least more correlated with how do we spend money in a more effective way to address the root problem. So, I mean, that's just a point of disagreement for me. And I think that's the way forward. But, it's really not that big of a deal breaker for me at the end of the day. I do agree with Sushi when it comes to the comments around, I think the supposition that almost the default state that we're always, over responding with militarized police. It does not seem to be backed up with data that anyone has bothered to put forward. So maybe Demon Mama, you have some stats that you'd like to share, but please put that in your closing statement so that we can at least get an idea of what the picture is, as opposed to everyone saying countless studies. And I don't mean to be critical of just you. I mean, just broadly speaking, there's very few references of any studies, and if they are referenced, it's ones that seem kind of honestly out of any form of sample size of validity when it comes to 40% of all police officers are abusers. So that just seems kind of like that's a tough one, and I would love to see more studies on that. So let's go from there. And then I also agree with we should increase training for police officers, because I happen to have a police officer family member who I believe honestly should be trained more. So I'm right there with you guys. I believe that it should include more training, and that we should have an enhanced police force that has better abilities to deal with more diverse problems across the spectrum. My name is RedGrayBlue. I'm a filthy centrist, and I have a lot of socially progressive views. There's some things I'm sure that people disagree with me on, and I welcome it. Please come by the channel and abuse me gently, or abuse me hard. Hey, whatever floats your boat. I welcome you to come over. Thank you, Dylan, and the rest of the team for having a conversation with me. I appreciate it.
No problem whatsoever. Next, we're gonna go to Wake the Beast, and after that, it'll be Demon Mama.
Oh, thank you. I just want to give my 2 points on this last topic. I thought about interjecting before, but I thought that the disagreement that was being argued out was more important than perhaps just hearing me regurgitate an opinion that maybe other people here have heard before. I want to throw you back to medieval England. Medieval England had a practice of shire reeves. The shire reeve was essentially a deputy that served in the shire for the sole purpose of making sure that the king's will was carried out. That was his purpose. So when we take a look at England on the eve of colonizing North America, that practice of having shire reeves continued. And that's why we now have sheriffs in America. So the shire reeves of England, that tradition became the sheriffs of America. And when you take a look at the southern United States, we still see this tradition of rural local communities being governed, being policed by small sheriff's departments. Some of the sheriffs don't even carry guns. Because in this instance, when you're dealing with the Gemeinschaft, where people are more than their identity or the role that they play, sometimes the social pressure of belonging to your in-group is enough to dissuade you from upsetting the social order. So what does this mean? It means that one feasible solution is to return back to a time when human beings in America lived in much smaller, manageable groups. When you take places like New York City, cities that have upwards of 8 million people, how could you ever hope to touch so many hearts and get so many different people to agree to the same standard of force, the same application of force in all situations? As long as we are determined to live in gigantic cities, fragmented and separated from each other spiritually, we will always be debating police tactics because we are unagreed. Now, I do want to return to a point that Pisco was having some difficulty understanding about the nature of existence. See, your identity is comprised in your permanent memory, your long-term memory, which is a part of your system too, right? Now, your identity is woven in the midst of a narrative, a chronological order of events that have happened to you, Pisco. This is what you will colloquially refer to in your mind when you think of who you are. And this memory is not transferable to me. So what that means is that it's fundamentally impossible for me to experience your memories, which means I cannot hope to understand exactly who you are. So I hope that maybe me giving it to you more directly makes the point a little easier to understand. I have to tell you something, Dylan. I'm unaccustomed to being on panels where I have to convince people because I'd much rather demonstrate an idea or a point. And the point is that you're much more than your political ideology. In reality, all of us are only dealing with a piece of the puzzle, so we're probably all missing something from our data sets, which means that we're probably all wrong. But despite the fact that we're wrong and disagreed, we can all be something. We can be an idea that reminds the world that you are the nature, the degree to which your friends, your family, and your society can depend on you. So the best thing you can do, even better than trying to espouse your political views, is give the world a silent example of what you feel everyone should be doing. But this time, when you do it sober. And this goes for you, Jake, Pisco, RedGrayBlue, Sushi, Demon Mama, Dylan Burns, last username, and even my Negro peon, Rahim, Dario. Big ups to all of you guys. I had a blast. Maybe I'll see you in the Twitch sphere. If not, stay strong and stay healthy.
Send to monkey.
Oh gosh, man, that last one got me. I will say that it is very rare that on one of these shows somebody gets their mind changed. I think it's happened once, and I think that was with the Turk, and it was on the death penalty. I think a lot of it is when speaking in front of audiences, people think the objective is to convince the person you're talking to, when really a lot of it is performative for the audience to try to sway the audience in your favor and have them leave away like, I really learned a lot today, I think I now more aligned with them. It's much of the reason why I do polling before and after the show to figure out where the audience was at the start and where they were at the end. But I do take that note. I do take it. Demon Mama, I'm throwing it to you. You're gonna wrap us up.
Sick. I just dropped a little tidbit of data that we can talk about here in the stream chat. And this is a report by the governance of New York City about how much money they spend on settlements. The police office alone spent nearly $1 billion on tort law violation settlements, which indicates that we have a police force that really jumps the gun, it sure seems. If you're spending almost $1 billion in settlements of civil rights violations, which is what tort law is, that's kind of scary, and this is just in one of our cities. So again, I point to the fact that we have had over and to Sushi's point, I'm glad he brought up the drug war. Since the drug war, we've had an increased militarization of police, increasing crackdown, this mentality of the beatings will continue until the morale improves. And that type of mentality is going to do absolutely nothing to actually solve the root problems of crime in our country. The root problems of crime in our country are caused by poverty. People don't turn to crime when they have alternatives, but when people are trapped and they're unable to get health care, they're unable to pay their rent, there's no relief from the government, and their representatives don't give a shit about them, and the only answer they're given is a boot, yeah, they're going to turn to crime. Of course, humans try to do their best to survive. Is this a controversial idea? I don't like this idea that intentionally and sort of preemptively damns every single American to being a sneaky murderer just waiting around the corner, where every engagement with another American needs to have a gun involved. Like, that's just, to me, is way too much. So yeah, I really don't approve or agree with that view. That view on policing. I think that we need to completely restructure our police. We need to greatly demilitarize them, put that money towards actually alleviating the things that cause crime, the things that everything from psychologists to sociologists have studied for decades upon decades upon decades, showing us that if we address the root problems of poverty and crime, we will actually solve the problem. Boots and sticks and tear gas doesn't solve every problem, but we throw it at every single problem. So that's what I'm going to say about that. My name is Demon Mama. You can find me at DemonMamaLive here on Twitch. You can find me at Your Demon Mama on Twitter. You should come join me. I rant about a lot of stuff. I go on a lot of panels. I talk about politics, and I'm always willing to debate. So yeah, come on by my channel.
Wonderful. Thank you all for stopping by for the Hippy Dippy podcast. I appreciate you all coming on, and I'd love to have you all on again in the future. you may stay in here and chat as long as you want, or scatter off into the wilderness, talking about how many dunks you got in the debate today. Oh my fucking god, Jesus Christ, what a show. Wow. Talk about a program.